the Fertile Crescent. Good afternoon, everyone. We are here for two items. One is a 5 p.m. work session with Town Council to review the strategic plan and budget calendar, and the regular council meeting of the Basalt Town Council, which will commence at 6 o'clock. and this is the August 11, 2020 meeting. The work session will focus on the strategic plan and budget calendar. So Ryan and Christy will lead us through that, and there'll be open opportunity for free exchange on this. This is a work session, so fire away when you have questions.
Yeah, that sounds good. So,
and before you start, I would suggest that Pam just make a record of who's in attendance at the work session.
Oh, good, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure.
Okay, quick roll call. Bill Kane.
Here.
Jerry Tenenbaum.
Here.
Bill Infante.
Here.
Glenn Drummond.
Here.
David Knight. Elise Hottle. Present. Thank you. Brian Slack.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. Oopsies. And then I'm going to come here. Okay, so everybody can see this, I presume?
Yep, looks good.
Great. So, as I indicated, there's quite a bit of material to get through, and so we do want this to be interactive. One thing I was thinking is maybe we take it one section at a time, and then I can pause at the end of a section to answer any questions or take any feedback. So if that's okay with council, we could give that a try.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. So basically what I attempted to do here was to create a crosswalk from our adopted strategic plan, which I used as a base document, and brought over items from our strategic work plan. And so those were two separate documents, but the strategic plan influenced the creation of the 2020 work plan. And so basically what we have is the, in this case, in this section, they're blue triangles. Those were original sort of action item titles. And then underneath those were the action items from the original strategic plan. And those are shown in black. So you see, you see like this one here, and then where I felt it was most appropriate, I brought over the work plan tasks and tried to fit them under where they would fit, and then you'll also see in here general comments, which are basically updates or thoughts on progress. So I'll take it from the top. I am going to go through these one by one, so it'll be a little bit tedious, but I'll try to keep talking quickly. So,
and I apologize, Ryan. I'm here now, so just.
Oh, great! Thank you, David.
Sorry. Yeah, just wait with.
Welcome. We're just getting started. So, so the first here is, our first strategic focus area is community. Okay, and then we've got, essentially a principal statement and a goal associated with those. And then under the action items, the first was to continue to improve our governance model. And from the original strategic plan, we had an action item under that was implement policies that improve transparency, customer service, and professionalism. So we had 3 tasks in the 2020 work plan. All 3 of these have been affected by COVID, but that's not to say we haven't made progress on them. The first one, however, is the employee manual. So that's a work in progress. We don't think we'll be able to finish that one out in 2020 because we're waiting on some other items before we can forge ahead on that. So that one I think will move over to a 2021 work plan. But the second there is a salary survey, and so we did actually complete this, and of course we hit it hard at the beginning of the year, and at this point, COVID hit in March as we were actually going to present it to council, and so we've taken it off. It just, wasn't the right time to talk about salaries and benefits and such, and so we're planning on bringing that back in some form during the budget formulation, but we're not so sure that pre-COVID and post-COVID look the same, and so we wouldn't bring it forward in its existing form. And then the third item here is to investigate proposals for our employee retirement benefits. So we've actually created that request for proposals, and while we paused because we were caught up with other items related to COVID, we do plan on bringing that back this year yet and trying to secure a new retirement benefits representative. The second here from the original strategic plan tasks is aligning town services with community needs. And so, how we do that and how we continue to refine over time is, certainly the master plan process played into that, where we heard of different projects that might have been pedestrian related, green initiatives, parking improvements, things of that nature. We also use our citizen committees for that, and they bring forward ideas and projects that they're hearing from their community members and through their experience. And then also, fortunately or unfortunately, it's response to natural disasters that we've experienced, so fire, flooding, and now COVID-19. And so, an example of something that's just become somewhat of a mainstay service and will continue is, wildfire mitigation and how we treat that going forward. So, moving on, this again from the original strategic plan, ensuring that the town has strong candidates for council, and it contemplated having a forum where those candidates can learn about town services and functions. And so when we had all of the folks that were running this year, we brought the department heads together, and we did have that forum and had pretty decent participation in it, and certainly can continue that in the future, but that gets a check mark. And then secondly, on here and related, is ongoing council education. So, this is something that's certainly important to bring council up to speed with current rules and laws, and the onboarding of new council members. And so I would say that this effort through COVID was certainly a challenge, both from a staff perspective and I could imagine from a new council person perspective, just trying to do everything over Zoom and whatnot. But I would also say that I have never done as much onboarding effort as I have this time. And so I think that the good news is that this council really does get off on the right footing with some really good information. And so next, our second, big bullet point here, seek ways to foster inclusiveness throughout our diverse community. So, we had a couple things in there, providing informational items in Spanish and English, providing opportunities to bring all of our cultures together and build relationships. So providing election information, our community police academy, town events, we've done quite a bit in that arena. Unfortunately, this year, under the 2020 work plan task, continue to support community events to celebrate our diversity. We were not able to have the salsa that we had resurrected last year as one example, but we were able to have community events that hopefully bring people out. And I think this is something for us to continue to work on as well. but working with TACA and the chamber and bringing the buskers out into the different areas of town seems to have been well received. Moving on here, supporting efforts of different community groups and whose mission or initiatives provide positive social and cultural outcomes. And so, under this, I think some of our community grants would fill in there, and collaboration with partner agencies. So we certainly rely on our partners to help provide services to different groups, and we'll be talking about our grants a little later. But we certainly rely on those nonprofit partners to help in this. And a big check mark down below on our citizen committees. We did a lot of work last year building out a structure for all of our citizen committees, bringing those forward, formalizing them, doing bylaws, and have a more predictable and consistent communication with them. And, council on this below bullet point of following the new communication strategy and, having the regular check-ins, that was something that we certainly heard as we were developing that, and we'll just continue to improve there. This one, collaborating with regional partners, has a lot of things in it, like housing, childcare, transportation, public improvements, services, economic, sustainability, public safety, and emergency response. So just a couple general comments there, that we do continue to make progress on affordable housing. We've had regional cooperation and planning on our construction of units. I'll talk about that a little bit more down below. Child care funding is something that we've been consistent with over the last several years. And, some of that funding, we provided $90,000 this last year, plus another 10 that was to go toward a study that's been put on hold. But we'll bring that back around. But, we're benefiting local families that way. Economic activity, certainly been a big year for that. And, I think over the last several years, we've seen a lot of new businesses coming into town. I think the town's role in that, in a lot of ways, is really a land use role. And then, being available to help businesses navigate the, setting up a business or those types of things. And we're working with the chamber on that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But, we see a tremendous amount of activity down in Willits, for example, and that was through, Willits' request, but then us really working with them to try to find that jobs, housing balance, and, also contemplating that in the master plan. Town finances is another one. Thanks to Christy and her hard work, and from all of our town department heads really digging in, and I think our budget document is just leaps and bounds above where it was before. And this year, I'm happy to say we did follow through with submitting this GASB Excellence Award, so we'll hear about that next spring. And then public improvements. We've been consistent on this with our parks upgrades, pedestrian improvements, and then certainly you can tell from our streets maintenance and infrastructure that we've been doing a good job there. One of the things that we'll talk about here shortly is our facilities and just the need to identify facilities maintenance, because that's one that has been deferred and something that we need to continue to work toward. Promoting civility in our community conversations and interactions, I think we've come a long way there as well, so that got a check mark. But I think a couple examples I was thinking of today on that. We're just getting through the process for development of the river park, and that really, to me, was an indicator, and I think to the community as well, that we're able to kind of move through these tougher community conversations and do so in a in a respectful and productive way. So let's see, we did have a couple other work plan tasks that fell under this. Design and implement a process for community grant funds. And so, again, we're going to talk about those grant funds in the regular meeting tonight. But it did include tobacco tax. So, this is a new funding source for the town. And so I've been working with Rob Stein at the school, as well as some of our other town managers. And, we've got another meeting coming up and intend to bring something to council this year yet, but really trying to create a proposal for youth access to mental health and behavioral services. The aim there was to try to keep kids away from smoking, tobacco, drugs, all that kind of thing, and a lot of routes for use of those come back to mental health and behavioral health. So with that, maybe I'll pause and just take any questions on this section. I'll bring it back up so I can see. Any questions right now, or?
Brian, I had a couple. One was under sort of council education, and the question had to do with CML. I've lost track of this. I don't know. Maybe it's already occurred. I don't know. They were going to do some kind of virtual or video series of presentations for the annual CML conference. Is that tracking, and are we invited to that? I don't know. Is there anything that we should be aware of?
So they put something out recently, and it looks like at the end of the month, I could forward that to council if that's of interest. And unfortunately, the CML conference is typically in person, of course, and it's great because you get to connect with colleagues, and then for council members, you get to chat with other council members. This one is going to be similar to the training you all did.
Oh, okay. All right. Well.
But if there is that interest, I think I just got that communication last week, so happy to forward if I was thinking that council got that as well, but happy to follow up on that.
Yeah. There's another that I would like, changing topics, that I think was one that we were all interested in. This is under the community banner, which was to improve our communication with the Latinx community. And, I am with this as well. I would love to track down Adriana, whoever is really the leader for the Latino community these days, and see if we can't foster some formal or informal ex officio or advisory council to meet with folks to talk about life in the valley and life in Basalt and our surrounding area in terms of their quality of life and how we touch their daily life and activities, and maybe set this up as some sort of quarterly meeting just to stay in touch and see how we're faring. So, I'm certainly personally willing to spend some time at that, but we may have to do some outreach and do some digging to see who the leaders and spokespeople are, and test the waters for setting up an advisory group.
Sure, happy to do it. And I think that's probably a multi-year and beyond the scope of just this year. But there is some movement afoot on that with our other governments. So, whatever government's role is in doing that, they're trying to engage with nonprofits that really have, a lot more contact formally with that community as well. So I've taken a note, so we'll talk about that more. Yeah. Anything else on this? It is 5:26, so just a quick time check. Want to try to get through this all today if we can. And just as an aside, if you have other things, feel free to give me a call or send me a note. and certainly we'll be talking more about it. Okay, so I'll move on to the built environment. So here, the first bullet item is talking about affordable housing. Of course, a topic that we discuss frequently, have made good strides on actually in the last handful of years. So one of the bullet points under that was supporting regional solutions, so looking at public-private partnerships or government to government partnerships. And so part of that, this note here is that we have worked with different folks, and that's proven to be successful in a number of different models. And so we've got the ski co-housing that's not only workforce housing, but then there's also 8 units set aside for daycare workers that were part of that. We also have the Basalt Vista. That's essentially a 4-way partnership with Habitat, Pitkin County, the school district, and the town of Basalt. And so that's providing housing, and that's an ownership model, so a little different than the others, and certainly been successful, particularly with its low impact on the environment and being all electric. The Roaring Fork Apartments, also a different model, rental model, 80% of AMI was the aim on that. And then we now most recently have a proposal down in Willis Bend for 75 units, and the Catholic Church is looking to put those up. So one thing too on this one just above it is we've done a lot of work over the last couple years on the town's affordable housing program, not only town-owned units, but also the units that we essentially have some oversight on. And so we use the BOC, the Affordable Housing Committee, to help us with policy there. But we've also really streamlined and gotten our expenses a much better understanding and gotten those under control with regard to the town-owned affordable housing. And I'll say that affordable housing that the town owns, we reduced the number and we're able to pay off some short-term debt that you'll see further down here. But it also is such a great recruiting tool for us to have units that we're able to place people in. So, and then lastly here, we investigate new ideas for permanent housing products that can help with affordability. And, I think that is certainly reflected in this here. And this is going to be an ongoing conversation, we know. Continue to enhance the town's parks, open space, and trails. We've made progress on this and will continue to. As far as trails go, the Light Hill Trail, we've worked with Roaring Fork Outdoor volunteers and are helping to contribute money toward that effort. The Baston mountain bike loop on Crown Mountain added about 6 miles of single track trail up in that area, which has been awesome, great success. And then the connector that we did along Two Rivers Road that we called from the bridge to nowhere, now the bridge to somewhere, bringing it down to the connector sidewalk by Old Pond Park. And now that completes a loop where people can walk through that park, come out onto Two Rivers without fear of interacting with the motorists. And then 2 others that I would highlight in here, the trail along Ponderosa Park, on the Roaring Fork River. We did improvements there last year, and those continue. But that's really part of a bigger system ultimately that hopefully one day connects over to the Whitewater Park, and we can kind of have this trail system that's sort of the chain that connects the emeralds, if you will, of the different parks that are along the Roaring Fork River. So we're certainly making progress there. And then Lot 10 in the Willis area, which is underway, but it's really meant to be a passive open space, but was cleared out and just accesses more, was made easier there. And so people who are walking by now have a bridge to cross a ditch that goes through that area, and then there's a nice little bench, and then of course you can access down to the river. So, and then opportunities to connect parks and open space. So, you know, I talked a little bit about that. I think covered sufficiently where we're doing these little bits and pieces, but there are bigger plans of ultimately making connections through these. And, you know, I know when planning is working with developers, you know, that's certainly at the forefront of trying to create those trail networks. We just had a small win up in Basalt Vista where they're now going to do a connector trail to the Light Hill Trail, and they're hoping to make that ADA accessible. So more to come on that. And then we had Basalt Mountain Trail connections. That's going to be a work in progress, certainly. TPW owns that property and it's closed off for mountain bikes, but it's open to hikers. And so just trying to continue to improve those trails and maybe both be able to get over to the north side of Basalt Mountain one day. Talked about this a little bit, the Wildfire Mitigation Program. This really is a partnership. We've made good strides with the fire district. John Melly's been awesome in helping the town. We've used the SWIFT crew out of the Rifle Correctional Facility. We did a great project last year on the hillside adjacent to Town Hall all the way down to the River Conservancy, and just kind of showing what mitigation looks like. It does not look like clear cut and actually improves the health of the area. And then we also did quite a bit above the water plant this year, again with the SWIFT crew, and then our own staff along with a different group of Rifle Correctional Facility folks have made strides in the River Park, Confluence Park, down by 7-Eleven, and then Ponderosa Park. Those are pretty heavily wooded areas, so we're just trying to make sure that those stay nice and natural, but are safe as well. And so we'll continue on that. And that's something, unfortunately, the SWIFT crew, we just got word yesterday that the state is defunding the SWIFT, you know, some of their programs, their work programs for jails and prisons throughout the state, and SWIFT crew is one that's getting cut, which is too bad because they really do provide an awesome service and have had great results for those folks leaving. So moving on, investigating building code changes to reduce wildfire hazards. The 2020 work plan task there was to look at building code changes. Of course, we're going to be talking about that tonight, and visited that at a work session at the last council meeting. Keeping the town's capital improvement plan up to date. So this is something we've done consistently over the last several years, and staff is working on that now. We do that in conjunction with our committees, you know, town council, and you know, utilizing policy documents like the master plan to help guide some of those decisions.
Can I jump in on one comment?
Sure.
So above on the 75 new housing units at the Willett Bend, all of council familiar with where that is?
Yeah, I am.
Everybody else? Like, part of our master plan is obviously this excludes it because it's already kind of established, but the master plan is basically any new developments that are going to get approved should be annexed into the town. You got 75 new housing units going in that parcel, literally a sidewalk on either side of that development. is all that differs between county and the town. I know we can't force the issue, but maybe it's worth pursuing a conversation about getting that developer to maybe annex. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but just wanted to point it out.
Great, thanks, Glenn. If there's interest in talking about that a bit more, we can certainly do that. Glenn, if it's okay, I'm going to continue rolling here just for sake of time. And let's see, so what this first work plan item here was designing and implementing the Basalt River Park Master Plan. And so that is currently postponed on the actual going to construction documents, but we have had the effort of doing those high-level plans, and town staff has been actively working with the owners and with the developer to move the platting forward, and we're getting closer to being able to purchase that property. And so far, I know that I've heard it stated before, but just to correct the record, the LOMR, the letter of map revision that is in process now, is not necessarily holding up the purchase of that property. So that purchase may be able to go through in advance of that. And then just a statement on the CIP that we've consistently done that and followed through those improvements, and we'll bring that back to council this year for approval as well. And then here's just somewhat of a value statement, but evaluating and considering the ongoing costs associated with new infrastructure. So this is becoming ever more important for us as we continue to develop parks and other infrastructure, just making sure we understand, kind of what that means from a staffing perspective, and that we're able to manage that and maintain it over time with a level of service that's, acceptable to our residents and to council, of course. Pursuing a location for the public works facility. So of course, we're all aware that we had a contract for that. I'm going to switch pages here really quickly, but this is one that is still at the forefront, and staff would like to have a conversation with council. And for tonight, just a couple talking points to put in the hopper, and then we'll bring it back. But a couple different funding options. There is, the same that we were using before, is looking at fund balance from the general fund, and then the RETA that we have down in Willits also is another resource there that we could possibly use. And so that one would basically just be a straight purchase. Our fund balance right now, or at the end of 19, was about 5.8 million, and our fund balance policy at the time, or currently still, is at I would put it at 2.5 million required to keep in holding. And so as we continue to get more information around the economy related to COVID, we'd like to bring this back to light. A more conservative approach that we could possibly take is looking at COPs, or certificates of participation, as well. And we put a little information in it here just to sort of demonstrate where the interest rates are. General obligation bonds, which of course would require an election, and we wouldn't be pursuing that necessarily, but they're very low, just sort of hovering around 1%. COPs are also extremely favorable, somewhere in the 1.5% to 2%, depending upon the term. So that's just something for us that has been bantered by this town for a long time, and we're now no longer occupying the Crown Mountain property. So we've got equipment that's here, there, and everywhere. And so, this is becoming ever more important for us. Let's see, I'm going to go back here. Sorry, this was in here. If this confused anybody, that was a mistake. I didn't pick up when I was doing that. We'd already talked about that. So maintaining our existing infrastructure and thinking about things like asset depreciation, the level of service that we provide, and then the increased costs of deferred maintenance. That's a bell that we consistently ring of, if we don't keep up with it, it just gets more expensive. And it's not because it's necessarily compounding, but the price of fixing certainly goes up, or the price of materials. But as it relates to things like roadways, if you keep up with them, they stay in pretty good shape, and the substructure stays in good shape. If you ignore it and thaw cycle occurs, then at times you get into a full rebuild situation. So, but this town's done a great job with things like that, and we hope to continue that. Let's see, and so we should focus. One thing that we're going to bring forward this next year is talking a little bit about facilities plan, and so that's just very high level. It's not a nitty-gritty engineering plan. It's more of just kind of calling out what our facilities are and what their need for maintenance would be, so that council and the community and staff really just get a good picture of what we need to do to keep our current obligations in good stead, while we're also thinking about new and improved infrastructure in town. So parking is another one that was in here, and I think there's a couple parking items. And so ADA, so we had some money in the budget this year for that. We were not able to get to those ADA improvements, so I did not check that. But that's something that we will want to pursue. There's a possibility we could get some of it, but that's just, that's a continual improvement. And we have done a good job of that over the last few years, making some improvements over in the subway area adjacent to Ponderosa Park, extending a sidewalk that would allow people to get through there without bumping over rocks and mud and that kind of thing. And, certainly keep that trail as well. So more to come on that. And then just this last check mark with common sense solutions for parking. Mayor Kane had brought up the possibility of parking at the school this year, and we were able to jump on that pretty quickly. And through efforts from Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, Rick Stevens helped out, and town staff, we were able to improve the trail that links the school to the downtown. And so, I've been seeing a few cars over there. It's certainly not packed, but it looks like some staff have been utilizing that, but, just kind of a low-hanging fruit and a quick win for us. So the next is working with CPW and the groundwater testing. So we got an update on that from Matt Yamashita. The testing's been done, and we're waiting for the results and the report, which should be coming out either late this summer or into the fall. And then looking also at long-range solutions. So this is not only for the gun range, but the state wildlife area, Lake Christine. And, we've been having conversations. Those are moving slowly, I would say, at this point. And so, we just have to keep up with those. They do have a new dam engineer that has started, and I've requested a meeting with him. And so we're working with Matt Yamashita to get that going. But we'd like to aim to get Lake Christine itself filled back up and an amenity for the town. So a work in progress. Pursuing a land use strategy that protects our environment, provides open space, and directs density to the urban core. we updated the town's master plan, and so I think we're able to meet that. That was adopted in March of this year. And another task in here that I did not check because this sort of full-blown item, which was talking to the ownership of all of Basalt Center Circle, and kind of creating a plan there. I've had conversations with at least 3 developers at this point in time, and I've been able to share our master plan with them and talk through what the allowed uses are. And I'll say I'm getting interest on the building itself, and talk to them about the grander vision and the grander plan, and that doesn't seem to be in the cards with the folks that are coming in, just because those other places are not for sale currently. And it's a big development with many different owners, and so this is probably an ongoing challenge that maybe deserves a little more time and strategy. And the building, of course, is actively for sale, and so there's people that come in and are asking questions somewhat frequently about that. Requiring transit and bicycle and pedestrian improvements. This gets a check mark as well. We, in every one of our developments, are looking at alternatives like WeCycle. Car share is something that's certainly come up more and more, and making sure, as memorialized in the master plan, that developments really have a nexus to transit. And then also investigating the growth capacity. We talked about this at the council level during the plan, and I think the direction at that during that time was we've got a good master plan that really provides direction for growth, and doing like a carrying capacity is probably outside of the scope of what we're able to do. Got about 10 minutes left. Is it all right if I keep going there?
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay. So local economy, participating in regional and state partnerships that can enhance our local economy. So continuing to support improvements in access to affordable housing. We've talked about that certainly a bunch tonight. And something that came out of the 2020 work plan was talking to some of our regional partners like CORE, Holy Cross, RMI, AGCI, others, in helping to create energy and transit-related solutions. And so, we do actively work with these groups, maybe not all simultaneously, and have, addressed these items in the master plan as well. So that's something that probably is a work in progress and something that can and let's see. So working with the Chamber of Commerce. So this one got a check mark. They did a brand building effort, and so that the first part of that is now complete. And so the Chamber, in talking to them, just trying to get that brand built and or more disseminated. And Chris Matera is doing a good job of that so far, and we'll continue to work on that as well. Let's see. Looking at strategies to improve broadband for our general businesses. So, this is something that's going to be ongoing. This is a multi-year thing. This is not something that happens overnight, certainly. But to speak of a few strategies that we have been working on. So first and foremost, DOLA, I had a conversation with our representative, and so we have access to some funding through DOLA to do a study, basically not an engineering study, but more, again, of a high-level study of understanding, what the partnerships that exist out there, and different strategies for a town like ours who really probably doesn't make sense for us to be in the broadband business ourselves. But leveraging partnerships is, in my experience, how that has been accomplished. So a couple irons in the fire, looking at doing that study, some developer obligations along Highway 82 to put fiber optic into the ground for part of it and conduit for another part. But that would basically bring the potential for fiber from Elgibel to Original Road. Also working with public partners like Holy Cross Energy. They're going to be doing a fiber project that's not meant to be, they don't want to be fiber providers right now, but they're looking to connect all their facilities and are willing to partner with towns like Basalt if there's opportunity to do so. So we've been talking to them. And then lastly, I think it's leveraging also our private partnerships. I mean, the people that do this for a living and have the resources and the wherewithal to maintain that infrastructure. Ting is a local company that certainly wants to have a better presence in Basalt. And from what I hear, they're bringing forward some plans. They used to be called under a different name, and they sounds like moving to Ting, they actually have some more money behind them to do some infrastructure projects. But I think even with groups like that, we need to work together. So an example of something we put into place within the last year or so was a shadow conduit ordinance. So anytime we're trenching, we have a requirement for conduit to go into the ground. So, over time, we get those conduit runs built out and aren't having to, go into the ground again and disturb pavement. Ensuring
That's a quick question on that one is broadband here. And, it's something that could help our local community take advantage of changes in the workforce, right, in the digital economy. Do we have a multi-year roadmap or anything like that, even if it's aspirational and very, very, very high level, is that something that we have or something we could do in the future?
I think that's what this study that I referred to touches on, those things. So it would identify, partnerships. It would identify, those, tasks, perhaps things that could kind of incrementally get you closer to, building out that infrastructure over time. And I think it also provides information where the town can understand, what kind of business do you want to be in? And is it do you want to be a broadband provider? I don't think that's where we want to be, just given we don't have that expertise on our staff, nor do I think that makes sense for us at the local level. But do we have partnerships that we can leverage? Northwest Cog is trying to build out and has access to a middle mile fiber and using Ting, using Pitkin County, so there's a lot of different groups that are doing different things that we can tap into. And I think that's really how I see us making strides into the future. And, I think it kind of starts with the creation of this plan, and we can kind of tailor it to be a roadmap, David. And so hopefully that helps.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and then jumping out to budget and our financial policies to protect the town's interests. So under this, there was protecting the sales tax revenue for the town. That gets a check mark. Jumping down to the general comment here, we now have sales tax coming from our online vendors, and our seeing those revenue sources come in, which is certainly helping to prop up our revenues for this year. Supporting annexation of sales tax producing businesses when consistent with growth policy. I didn't check this one, not that it's not on our radar, it's just the opportunity has not presented itself over the last year or so. I just left it there, but I think it's, worthy to keep at the forefront, and, I think it's something that most towns pursue, and you're able to take proposed development that might be in an unincorporated area and bring it in to provide, municipal level services and be able to garner that revenue to be able to provide it. And then this next one also is echoed from what I said earlier about the sales tax revenue, that having, the money from those online sources helps to level the playing field a bit for our brick and mortar businesses.
Do you feel that the supporting annexation, like the above affordable housing project in conjunction with what's commercially there, is under those guidelines?
Well, I think off the top of my head, there's very little in the way of sales tax producing businesses in there. So what you need to look at is, does it make sense? From a financial standpoint, is bringing that into the town of Basalt, where you're providing services, but there may or may not be a fair share contribution, is what the council ultimately has to weigh, and so it's pretty typical to do, take a look at that, not just anecdotally, but really looking at what that produces in the way of property tax, sales tax, etc., and making a decision that's more informed. So, sorry, that's a little vague, but that's typically how it's done, and what I've seen in my experience.
And can I just chime in real quickly with a minute to go before 6 when we're all going to cut off? I think this is really a great kind of recapitulation of what has been accomplished over the past year or two. But I wonder if we're going to have another opportunity to get together as council to actually discuss, review, and revise the strategic plan. This was kind of what I had hoped that we would have addressed 2 months ago when we did our retreat, but we really didn't get there. And there are some pretty big issues, like the issue that Glenn just raised about annexation. There are a number of small neighborhoods we need to address whether we want to annex, and how we continue to support these islands within our town of Basalt. The other one that stands out in my mind is Rita's, how we use them, what the sources, what the funds are used for, and whether or not we may want to examine relaxing some of those constraints that are within our authority as the town council. But the other objective that I had really hoped we would have begun discussing at some earlier point was the question of setting benchmarks. The strategic framework was a great initiative that we launched in late 2018. It very nicely lays out our priorities, but we never got to the point of setting benchmarks that will define the tangible results that we hope to deliver. So whereas, it seems like we've done an awful lot, these are all very much qualitative in nature in most regards, not all, but in many. And I'd love to discuss the formulation of the benchmarks that will really give us the gravitas to defend the expenditure of budget resources for the purposes that we've identified as priorities. And so I guess, the big question is, when are we going to get to that point? When is council going to have the opportunity to discuss with other council members the strategic priorities that we may share and how we're going to measure those?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we got to take it a step at a time. The first, item that came out of the retreat that we had was for council to, have a chance to get introduced to the strategic plan, and so I think we're following through on that step. And we've got our budget calendar on here for your review as well, and kind of outline those steps where we have committees bringing forward their proposals for next year. We've got staff actively working on the budget, and then certainly we need to get council input, and so that'll be up to council as to how much time you need to set aside to do that. But it's our intent to follow up and provide, you know, a sort of a draft. It was not in our work plan to redo the strategic plan this year, and so that was not on our radar. But the work plan that would be complementary to it for 2021 is something that we would begin to create and bring that forward to council. And you know, I think this continues to be a work in progress. We've made a lot of progress from not having a strategic plan to now having one, and being able to report out on it, and what those accomplishments have been over the last year. So it's all a work in progress, and you know, if council wants some more time to get together and discuss these things, we certainly can. That's what we intended built into the budget calendar. So hopefully that answers your question, Bill.
Not really, but.
Okay, I'll try harder later.
Ryan,
so,
I don't, if I may, it's not that you're not answering the question, but I support Bill, that I really had hoped that this would have been more of a discussion, and it was a great overview, and obviously we still have more to go. And it's great to see all of the accomplishments that have happened over the last year, but I, for one, you know, I want to get my hands into it. I want to get into the meat of it. I want to talk about things with my fellow counselors, you know, and figure out, you know, some of these big picture questions, you know, what direction we want to go. And I agree with Bill that it'd be nice to have some benchmarks to, like, truly be able to say, you know, not just yes or no, we did it, but you know, really have kind of a scorecard of how we're doing meeting those plans.
And you know, I think that in order for us to have that conversation, this council needs to know where we're coming from. And so that was the direction that I got at the retreat. So, you know, hopefully other council members are in support of that this is, you know, simply a step in the process to getting toward what you're talking about, Elise. And,
definitely.
You know,
I'm asking, can we set another time? Are other counselors interested in having that discussion? You know, taking the time to really dig in.
Yeah, and I think in the budget calendar we addressed that, and we want to get that update and for you guys to be able to put in your 2 cents on, you know, kind of the direction on these focus areas. But, you know, again, I think we've got to start from square one so that you guys understand sort of what the previous council created plus this work plan and how they intermix. So if that was a miss on you know, creating this crosswalk here, then, you know, let me know what specifically it is that we need to talk about. The one challenge I think is bringing a blank piece of paper to a council of 7, in my experience, is a challenge because you don't seem to get anything done. I think you need to have that input from the staff and the committees, and then council gets to, like, chew on that and add to. And you know, I think that's staff's role, is to create something and then have you guys give us direction, like, this is a good start, this is not, you know. So I think we're saying the same thing, Elise, and I'd be interested if the rest of the council feels like you know, we missed something, or we need to jump ahead a couple steps.
I think it's a good start. We're heading in the right direction. It's just, you have to say, here's where we are to move forward.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that we get through this tonight. This is a pretty good overview what the objectives were, what specific tasks got, what boxes got checked. Undoubtedly be useful to take the next step and, kind of let this council weigh in and establish its own priorities. My suggestion would be we get through this tonight. I'd be interested in hearing more from Elise and Bill. I'm not sure what benchmark really means in this context, and I'm sure you do, and it would be really helpful if you could maybe write us, to the rest of the council and outline what your expectations are, and maybe we can frame something around that.
And I think with regard to benchmarks, we do see that built into our budget from this last year, and really sort of showing both the council and the community where you're putting money as it relates to discretionary funding for green initiatives, things like that. We also have to balance that with our staff size and the ability to do that. Big towns, Boulder, Fort Collins, they do that kind of thing, and they also have very large staff to be able to do that. So I think we just have to set out with reasonable expectations of what a small staff is able to accomplish.
Well, I know we don't have enough time to discuss this now, but it's frankly, it's not about staff, it's about council. And frankly, there are a number of us who've been on council for several years, and we're pretty much up to speed. The others were sworn in almost 4 months ago. I think, frankly, they've read the strategic framework, and we need to count on the fact that they are well briefed and able to comment on issues of strategic focus going forward. But a very specific example of benchmarking would be setting a target for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions against which we budget money. And we simply set targets. And every year we review those targets, and then we judge whether we need to spend more or spend less. But that kind of benchmarking is related to social inclusion, it's related to participation on council, it's related to economic growth and development, affordable housing. Pick your objective, and we should be benchmarking these things. And that was one of the bridges that we never got to when we established the strategic framework in 2018. And it was simply a bridge too far at that point, but it's one that we need to get to, because otherwise we don't know whether we are achieving tangible results or not.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, just to follow up on that briefly, is it's certainly about council's direction, but I think there's also a reality to where a small town sits and what we're able to do. So we want to inform you and set the council and the staff up for success. And so my earlier statement of this being, incremental in what we're able to do, I think that holds. And if I think we, need to hear of specifically what benchmarking means. You explained a little bit of it, but there's a whole lot of different ideas, big and lofty, that chasing them all down and providing those benchmarks. Maybe we start with a few, and that's how we do it. Anyway, David, were you going to say something?
No, yeah, just quickly, I think addressing this is a great, kind of my thoughts here. This was a great catch up to where we are and kind of level setting 2020. I think looking at the strategic plan for 2021 in conjunction with the budget planning process does make sense. I swear with that. And I'm just listening to the back and forth about benchmarks. And when I hear benchmarks, I hear key performance indicators like KPIs. And I think having some reasonable and appropriate way to measure, did we achieve what we set out to achieve in the work plan in support of these strategic focus areas is appropriate, but it's got to be, or did we hit them? It's got to be appropriate and measurable, given the resources that we have, et cetera. So I'm supportive of doing something like that.
Well, and I just wanted to chime in because on this overall strategic focus area. The plan we created was so different than we've done in the past. And it has achievable pieces in this that we are checking the box and moving forward on. I don't want us to get so kind of tied down into specifics that we can't be nimble. And we try too hard. We're 7 people trying to set a focus for the town and how our local government can help all of these specific areas. And so I think it is definitely time for the council to kind of come together and see where we've been and to modify this to really move forward. We're in a different era anyway, but I think we're on a good path. And I think, honestly, the budget's going to be a big deal because a lot of these strategic focus areas are going to be, do we actually budget to make some of these things happen or not? And we'll see which ones are the priorities and which ones are not. And so I think there's a lot in here that is really good. I've been very happy with where, the focus area is. It gives staff direction on where to focus and where to, really spend their time. So I like the direction of this. I do not feel we're off base. I think there's a lot more to be done. And as we move through this budget and really set this, new strategic plan, we'll be just fine.
Okay, guys, we're at 6:15. So, Ryan, did you have more on trying to wrap up the summary?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, there's another couple pages here, but what we can do is just have council, review the rest of these pages on their own, so they just have an understanding of where we are, and then we'll schedule some more time to create what I think is the 2021 work plan. I would say doing a full-blown strategic plan between now and budget adoption is not realistic, and I don't think that's what I'm hearing. And so we just want to take the cues from the strategic plan we have and build it into a new 2021 work plan. And I think that was the punchline for tonight anyway.
Good deal. Okay, so we will read the balance of it. It's in our packet for tonight, and then we will schedule more time and additional work session to complete this element and then frame a discussion about 2021, and Bill and Elise can enlighten us about benchmarking and what thoughts you have about that as it relates to the strategic plan goals. So if there are no further questions, we're going to move on to our regular meeting time.
Thanks, Ryan, for the readout.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. It's a pretty good overview of everything that we've got going on here, so I really appreciated it and appreciate the effort.
Needed to know.
Okay, any last comments before we move on? Gone. I think we will now conclude the work session and commence our regular council meeting. So I will ask Pam Schilling to call the roll, and we will call our regular meeting to order.
Gladly, thank you. Let's begin with Glenn Drummond.
Here.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight.
Here.
Thank you, David. Elise Hoddle.
Present.
Thank you, Elise. Ryan Slack.
Here.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you. Bill Kane.
Here.
Gary Turnbaum.
Here.
And Bill Monte.
I am here.
Thank you, Bill. All present.
Okay, thank you very much. Our first order of business is the consent agenda, which contains two items.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Jeff.
apologies for the interruption. prior to getting into the consent agenda, I would, this is kind of a late addition, but would suggest that the agenda be amended, and for the purpose of adding an executive session. It's not currently on the agenda, but based on it being an executive session, I think it's appropriate to amend the agenda to add that to the end of the agenda. The purpose of the executive session would be for conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS 24.64024B, and more specifically to discuss the town's water utility easements. So if council is amenable, someone could make a motion to amend the agenda to add that item to the end of the agenda, and it would be so amended.
I think I got this. So are we going to defer the entirety of the consent agenda and discuss it in the context of an executive session?
No, this would be unrelated to anything on the consent agenda. This is just to amend the agenda.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Prior to getting into our first item on the agenda to amend.
Okay. This is a procedural sequencing. So I need a motion to add an executive session to the end of our night's formal agenda.
What do we need the wording to be?
Yeah, we need the language probably.
Well,
Don't you have to notice an executive session in advance of the meeting in which you are calling it?
I think there's discretion to add an executive session in this case without it being included on the original agenda. And the specific language of the motion to go into the executive session will be recited at the time we enter into the executive session. So this would just be to add the executive session to the agenda at the end of the meeting.
Given all of what we've been through, I don't know what other people's feelings are, but my intuition just tells me better safe than sorry. I will, again, reserve a vote for when the vote comes up, but we are finally about to put many legal issues behind us. I would hate to provoke one unnecessarily. And so my understanding is that executive sessions need to be noticed in advance, and that doesn't mean an hour and 15 minutes before we hold it. But I will defer to the rest of council, and I will cast my vote as I cast it.
And if that's town council's, if that's town council's action to not have an executive session, that's perfectly fine. I can provide some additional correspondence to the town council, and if a special meeting needs to be called, then that could happen.
I just want to be legal.
Sure.
Well, our lawyer has told us we're well within our bounds from a notice standpoint, Jeff, to do this tonight.
I think there's the ability to call an executive session given that there's not public participation in it, and that the topic will be announced, identified, and made clear as part of this amendment. I think there's the ability to do that. However, if in the abundance of caution, the council would prefer not to, that's fine as well.
Okay. Well, let me assess the mood of the council here. Is there support, a motion to add an executive session at the end of our meeting tonight? Is anybody, council, prepared to make that motion? And is there a second? Okay.
Sounds like it fails for lack of motion.
Yeah, the silence is deafening here. So, so if you would undertake to provide notice, you'll give us a time and date, and we'll do a Zoom call. Does this pertain? I mean, is it going to affect our decision making on any? Okay, all right. So it sounds like the pleasure of the council is to do this after more notice and more proper notice. So, okay. Okay, Jeff. Okay, I think you're muted there. Okay, so then I will be back on the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed, containing 2 items, the minutes from July 28th and approval of the settlement agreement.
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is this a roll call, Pam, or voice vote?
Voice vote is fine.
Voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is, now we will turn to public comment. I think Susan Filt now will help us to, and I will recite the rules for public comment for those that are watching. Please limit comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive. Town council will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. So we're going to allow for time for public to call in. Susan, do you have this under control?
And just to make an announcement, I have, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call. So far, we don't have anyone who has asked us to speak, so I have put the timer on, and we're going to give 2 minutes for an opportunity for folks to email or text us.
So you didn't receive any emails or notes from people that
Nope.
indicated that they wanted to speak? Okay.
No, and we have put on the agenda that we would appreciate getting emails or texts before 6 o'clock, but that we would still provide an opportunity for comment.
Okay. We need like one of those NBA shot clocks, I think, to keep track of these call-ins. So I'm going to assume at this point that that we do not have public comment tonight, and should someone call in while we are moving on to our next item, we can certainly back up, but for now, we will assume that that there are no public comments tonight. So our next order of business is mayor and council reports and comments. So the floor is open for council. I have a few, but I will hold them in deference to my fellow councilors. So the floor is open for council comments.
I'll just make a quick comment, as I always do. Our support of the Rudai Water Power and Authority is working. 14 boats, fully caught with mussels, hundreds decontaminated. Rudai is an amazing asset for Basalt, and we're doing great to support it. So I thank everyone for that.
Is that 14 to date, or since last time we talked about it?
14 as of Sunday.
As of Sunday, okay.
Fully decontaminated.
So, Brian, are there forecasts for the sort of pond elevation at Rudai? The news reports are that, we maybe had released more water in March and April, anticipating a more protracted runoff and more precipitation in April and May than we got. So, we're meeting fish flows for the 15-mile reach right now, and it's really drawing the reservoir down. Are there concerns about that? What's all that looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're pulling off that article, and I think everything that was stated in there, I mean, there's a balance between RUWAPA as well as the BLM and the authority of releasing water out. We only control so many feet of water. So, yes, I think we are going to see the water levels continue to drop. But overall, you know, they're working on new strategies to predict more than just the SNOTEL sites in April long. I'm sure would love to come speak to us on council to elaborate.
That'd be great. Any additional council comments? Reports?
Comment. Many of you may have read, but the Great American Outdoors Act did pass. It was signed by President Trump last week, which is a major big victory for us all. It frees up, it dedicates a permanent source of funding to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which will benefit the United States, and it could benefit Colorado. So big victory. Thanks to you all. Thanks to Elise for spearheading that. And it is very good news for us and for the state of our environment. There is a new request coming in from the same great folks who led the advocacy on Great American Outdoors Act. That's the Mountain Pact. They are looking to gin up support for passage of the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Economy Act, known as CORE, which will provide for the designation of certain wilderness areas, recreation management areas, and conservation areas in our great state. The bill was introduced by Senator Bennett and by Rep. Neguse, and the Mountain Pact would like to invite our address of a letter to Senator Gardner to secure his support as well. Now, of course, it's unlikely this is going to pass in the current session of Congress. It'll get pushed back to the 101st, but nevertheless, it will put on record our commitment to supporting the CORE Act and seeing its passage. And if, Bill, if you agree, I would be happy to send a letter, which I received yesterday from the Mountain Pact, to you and to staff for further discussion and hopefully for our agreement as a council to sign on at our council meeting in later in August.
That sounds very satisfactory. If you could do that, that'd be great. Just send it on to us. I'd love to learn more about it, and then you know, I'm sure we'll be amenable to supporting a worthwhile effort like that. Let's get everybody educated as to what it calls for and where the wilderness areas are, and so we're a little bit more literate about it. But appreciate you bringing it up, and let's plan on seeing this at the next meeting.
There's a really great website that Senator Bennett has created, so we'll forward that link. That has a really good explanation of what they're trying to accomplish.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, let's look at that. That's perfect. Okay, well, I had a few things I would like to raise for council. I'll try to keep them brief, although it's become a bit of a list. I hope I'm not stealing, this is a bad pun here, but I hope I'm not stealing anyone's fire, double pun, because this afternoon, CPW formally closed our shooting range, citing excessive dry vegetation and elevated fire hazard. So the shooting range is now closed and will remain closed until fire conditions substantially change, as I understand it. So be aware of that. I wanted to report to council on an effort that I undertook to get the black fence down. And Elise and I have been talking about this, and I've got quite a number of constituents in town that would love to see the black fence down. My take on the situation is, I'll make this short and sweet, is that the fence is on private property. I think there's a pretty broad misconception in the community. A lot of people think it's the town of Basalt's fence. It is not our fence. It's on private property. And CDC owns the land. They own the fence. And their view is that the fence will come down when the transaction is completed. Transaction being the purchase of the land by the town and by Tim Belinsky and his team. So the barrier to moving forward with the purchase and getting the fence down is subdivision. The land has to be subdivided. We have to have a legal description of the parcel that we're actually purchasing. We own the land, then we can do with the fence as we see fit. But I did my due diligence. I called everybody I could call that has some direct or indirect influence on the fence, and I spoke to the owners, and they're disinclined to take the fence down until we've done the deal. I did plead a case that the town really did everything we did in good faith. The plan's been approved. I have offered the idea of bringing to council a conditional sales contract or something that would improve the confidence level that we intend to buy this land and really fix it up, and would love to get the fence down while the summer is still here. And I was not successful at that. So, you know, we have a circumstance of a private landowner who just does not want to move the fence until we actually do the deal. So the subdivision, the plat is in progress. I think the ground actual survey work has been completed. I think, so it's a matter of preparing the plat, all the plat notes, and the legal description. And this will be before council, I think within a month, something like that is kind of the time frame. And that will prepare the land for sale. So the black fence will be with us for a while. I think it's going to be fixed up so it doesn't flap in the breeze. Disappointed, but that's life. You don't always get what you want. So that's that. This week we did another video, sort of a mayor outreach to the community on a number of issues. Employee housing, affordable housing was one of them, just because there just seemed that there was a lot of misunderstanding and poor information about both the inventory of housing and what our role is as a community in producing housing. So I don't know if you got to see it. I thought it got unfair ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. You know, so the audience score was pretty high, like 90. But at any rate, the video is out. It covers a number of topics. I think I'm bringing it up tonight because I think the idea was that this was going to be a traveling trophy. This was going to be a rotating deal here. So it's really time for other counselors. And please don't all rush in at the same time. I know this is going to be very popular. But anyway, the door is open for others that would like to do these videos. It's a great way to you know, associate a name with a face and get before the community. I know that they're watched because I get all sorts of comments from, we put it on the community Facebook page, we put it on, you know, our town Facebook page, and so I get lots of commentary, and I think it's been pretty well received. So whoever would like to step up next, and you can pick topics of your choosing and reach out to the community. But the spirit of it is to report on what the council's doing and what we're up to. So just let me or Ryan know who is up next. And you know, if no one volunteers, then we will use the Wheel of Fortune method to select the next counselor to do these videos. That's that. I've had a lot of questions. Maybe I'm not looking for an answer right now, but there's a lot of interest in trying to keep the pool open for longer. I know Ryan's working on it with Brian, and you know, we just have school now opening on the 21st for in-person. We have remote learning and potentially some transition to hybrid before the 21st. But you know, this is a very difficult process. The numbers are bouncing all over the place. One hand, we see that we have stabilized positive cases, and then we get reports today about this enormous spread amongst kids. And so our sympathies go out to Rob Stein and the school district trying to figure out what to do here. But at any rate, I think the message that I related in the video was that Brian, to the extent we can, we have a one-person recreation department, but to the extent we can use our facilities and programs to keep kids occupied until we get a more formal structure, I think it's really going to be really appreciated by the community. I would like to suggest, this is a personal one, and this may not enjoy wide popularity, but in light of what we're going to see a little later in the evening on sales tax performance and our fiscal situation, and knowing that we lost our public works space at Crown Mountain, or out at the rugby field, I think we should give staff direction to revisit the Mid-Valley site, either on a lease or lease to purchase, or do something to help address more storage for and workspace for our public works department. I know we were pretty emphatic the last time we saw that. It was our first meeting. You know, we had you know, only a couple weeks of, you know, the stay-at-home order. It was a very scary time. I think we could possibly deal with a lot more confidence right now. So I'd like to bring that back up again if there is support on council for doing it.
Buy it?
What's that, Glenn?
You can buy it? Or in a contract?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, I think what we ought to do is just serve it back to Ryan and get him to revisit it and maybe report back to us. I know there was another buyer interested in it. I don't know if that's still in the works. It may be gone, but I don't think so. So that might be worth reporting back about either a lease or a lease to purchase. I think that's it. The only comment I would make was that, kind of responding to Glenn earlier about the housing at Willits Bend, is that, you know, every time one of these comes up, there's, you know, everybody wants to fashion some kind of new process. I think the reality is that we do have a process in place. We have a 3-mile referral. We have a Roaring Fork Planning Commission. The land is in Eagle County. And I would really strongly recommend that we see what our Roaring Fork Planning Commission comes up with. I believe there will be a referral to council from the Planning Commission's recommendation. Susan can correct me on that. But I think we ought to work through that and see, you know, sort of the orthodox process that we have in place here, and not undermine the region, you know, the Roaring Fork Planning Commission, and see what we come up with.
Bill,
yeah.
I talked to Temple about it because she did a site visit. She's on the Roaring Fork Planning Commission, and she was under the understanding we had already commented. That was the main reason I was asking.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, I guess then I would flag it for staff so they could give us a briefing on where that thing stands and what opportunities the town of Basalt will have to either comment or review. That would be good to know. I know a lot of our citizens are going to be affected one way or the other by that outcome.
On that note, the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission did a walkabout of the site last week. They were going to host 3 public fora. They are now hosting 2. The first one will be on the 20th. I don't recall when the second will be. There are 3 commissioner public hearings. Comment has been invited. I know that the proponents have also presented this to our Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission, and it is simply moving through a process right now. The issue that is being addressed is the request for modification or amendment of the existing PUD, converting from mixed-use residential, commercial, and light industrial to all residential. Were it not for the request to convert to residential, there would be no process to go through if it were fully in conformance with the PUD. So that's the issue. Their comment is open. In speaking with the county commissioners or the county staff this morning, as the president of the Willits Bend HOA, I was informed that they are looking forward to entertaining comment. They are inviting public participation with advance approval at any of the RPC meetings, as well as at the commissioner meetings, and this is, of course, for reasons of COVID, they're limiting numbers, but they are inviting also participation and comment by Zoom or in written form. So the process goes on. It is nowhere close to over. It's barely just beginning.
Okay, good. That's good news. I mean, it's good information. Thanks, Bill. I think that concludes my remarks. I guess the last thing I would say is, I'm not sure I'm a strong advocate here, but I've heard from numerous constituents that they think Basalt should investigate the Glenwood Springs and Aspen mask model by defining a mask area, a downtown zone, with mandatory masks to be worn outside. It wouldn't be a discretion to not wear a mask if you can distance by 6 feet. It would just be a zone where masks are required. And I don't want to try to wrestle that to the ground tonight. I want to kind of float it out there and see what council thinks about it, and maybe get your comments to Ryan about it. So I know I know enforcement is a huge issue surrounding that, and it's a big discussion, and I would defer it to the next meeting, given that it's 6:45 already. So a lot of stuff out there. That concludes my remarks. Any others before we go to the manager's report? Okay.
Oh, Bill, Jeff wanted to add a comment.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment based on your report with respect to the Basalt River Park. The town council will not see any additional action as it relates to the purchase contracts. Those have already been approved by ordinance by the town council. We're just in a position of trying to finalize that plat so that then a conditional portion of those contracts can become effective and we can move forward on that purchase. Just a quick clarification for all the town council.
Now, that's a helpful clarification. I thought we were going to have to approve the final plat once it had been prepared.
I think that authority was built into the approval ordinance.
Great.
Just a matter of finalizing some easements and other things.
That's good news. Thank you.
Very good.
Anything else before we go to the manager's report? Okay, Ryan.
Okay, so a couple items. Bill, you had mentioned the recreation and what the town might be able to do there. Brian Pacenti's been doing a lot of hard work around that, trying to get some programs built. He is looking at the pool and has talked to some lifeguards that could potentially help out. Unfortunately, we don't have information from the high school just yet as to what their schedules look like, and so they have not been able to commit our current lifeguards. But nonetheless, we continue to look at that. And the pool has still been, popular. It's still warm out, and so I think that's looking pretty good. But he's also looking at the Roaring Fork Conservancy, working with them and trying to do a fly fishing activity for kids, as well as sort of a little outdoor biology lab type of activity. And then he's looking at different sports like lacrosse, basketball, soccer, flag football, things that could work in light of the orders that are in place, and then of course also sort of non-sports things like arts, dance, performance, things like that. So all of that's in the works, and no doubt we're going to have to tap into some partners in order to do that, but it's underway nonetheless. And just so you know, the gun range, we did get word that it's closed today. But I also heard that people were shooting up there, so I did ask an officer to go by, and the gate was not locked. So we've informed CPW of that and are requesting that be locked. And so just as in case you guys hear.
Yeah, thanks for that follow-up. That's good news.
Sure.
It's not good news that it was open, but it's good news that we detected it anyway. Thank you.
Yeah. let's see. And then I did hear Chief Knott emailed and was able to get word back from Chief Thompson that it looks like stage 2 fire restrictions are going to go into place Friday at 12:01 a.m. And so that would be for both counties, as I understand, Eagle, Pitkin, and then also the public lands, DLM and Forest Service. So we should be seeing that. And I got a notice on my phone as we've been sitting here. I didn't read it, but it looked like it was something alluding to that. Okay, and then I do have a couple of things to bring up with you. So you'd asked us to get some information on the Gallagher repeal, and so we were able to reach out to Colorado Municipal League. We enclosed some information in your packets, and so it's actually some quite good information on disseminating what is Gallagher and how does it affect you. So I would encourage, if you want to look through that, it's a great plain language explanation. So I did talk to John Stabney at Northwest COG and asked him if he'd been in touch with CML, and he hadn't as of the time I talked to him. So I encouraged him to do that. I think just kind of better with alignment with those types of organizations. And so basically, we wanted to provide this to you. It looks like CML, is going to take a position on it in September. And so, our suggestion is both the Northwest COG and the town, if we want to support or not, that we do so once we know what the position from CML would be, but then also that timing kind of lines up with the election as well. It's just a suggestion to council that if we did something now, it's probably a little early for the election, and waiting a bit, we propose to bring it back in September to you all, and we'd stay in touch with Northwest COG or Bill to do that through his contacts. But hopefully you guys got some good information there. So happy to take feedback on that.
Bill Infante, is that timely for COG? Will that work for their efforts?
I think that makes sense, and I think it's a prudent and reasonable course of action for the town of Basalt.
Great.
Cool. Okay, and then the second thing that I had here was just to bring up briefly on our discretionary grant cycle. I mentioned that I'd bring this up during the regular meeting. So normally, so we've got $35,000 that we have distributed to a variety of nonprofits, and typically that's been done in smaller grants, and we've provided that information for you. We put that information application out to those nonprofits usually in September. They return them in October. And then we've had a subcommittee of 3 on the council. All 3 of those members are now no longer on council. And so if council would like to continue down this road of having sort of a small grant cycle where you benefit a handful of nonprofits, and then the complement to that is council has consistently given bigger grant amounts for things that frankly align with things we're seeing in the strategic plan, like daycare or green team items, things of that nature. To the arts, of course, was another big one for us in affordable housing. And so just wanted to get a little direction on that if you wanted to proceed with us putting those applications out on September 1st as we have.
And we need 3 volunteers, correct?
Yeah, we would be asking for 3 volunteers. That's right.
You want to do both of that right now? We'll get the volunteers and
if you guys are up for it, I saw a couple of hands go up there, or maybe there are questions. I don't know, but
Yeah, who wants to sign up? Glenn signed up. He's in there.
I'll sign up.
Yeah, Elise signed up. And who else?
David.
So we got 3.
Okay.
Good.
That's
And-
great. Good. That's good auctioneering, isn't it? That's, I think I missed my calling here. That's pretty cool.
We'll follow up with you guys. Yeah.
Just one question. So in the packet information, it talks about how in the last cycle there was some conversation about, doing a bunch of small grants versus, fewer large grants. Is that something that we need to address ahead of time? Or do we just put the application out and see what we get back?
No, so right now, you would have the sort of the $35,000 to divvy up. If you don't want to go that route, I think we need to let those applicants know ahead of time, because they'd be asking for, and the application has direction on them being somewhat smaller grants.
Okay.
And so I think the point I was trying to make too is, we've got almost 2 different grant efforts. And so we've got these small ones, and then we have given out larger ones like to the daycare and like to affordable housing, and things that align with where council is. So, the one thing I will tell you anecdotally that we hear back from the nonprofits is even those small grants are helpful for them, because when they get a sort of broad support from, whether it be, Aspen and from the counties or from the town, and we're all kind of contributing, they're able to leverage that. And so they kind of get that broad support that helps them go to their other donors on the private side. So if you all are okay with proceeding as we had, and we'll sign you guys up and call you in December and get those reviewed and some decisions made.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. And of course, what you'll do during the grant cycle, you'll have more discussions on where you want to put some of the money for discretionary on diverse things. That's all I have for you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. It takes us to our 650 item. It's 6:54, so I'm 4 minutes off here. So with like United Airlines, our on-time performance here, we will move on to work session with the Green Team. Susan Philp and Sarah Nadali will lead the discussion.
Sure.
Looking forward to hearing what's going on with Green Team.
Okay, so we have 2 items under Green Team items. The first is a work session, and just to note that this is a work session inside of the council meeting, so it just might be a little more informal because we have a lot of our kind of supporting agencies on the Zoom call here and a couple of our Green Team members. So Sarah's gonna kind of give us an overview of what the Green Team has accomplished in the last couple of years, along with what the Green Team has been talking about for the 2021 work program. And just to kind of remind folks, as Ryan kind of pointed out when he was giving the overview on the strategic plan, the council wanted to hear from the different committees periodically and before the budget process was well underway, so that the council could kind of get an understanding of what the committees were proposing, and then the council could have an opportunity to kind of talk more and give direction to the committee. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Susan. I just want to introduce the Green Team members and supporters that are on the call today as well. So as far as Green Team members, we have Doug Goldsmith with Mountain Waste. Jerry Terwilliger is also here. He is a local citizen and I believe was there at the very beginning of when the Green Team was formed. Also have Mary Weiner from Holy Cross, Five Filerman with CORE is on the line, and please let me know if I am missing anyone. I think that is it for now. So we might be able to hear from them later. So I just want to do a quick screen share so I can do a presentation, brief presentation for you all. And looks like that's pretty good. Okay. Okay, so I just want to give some background on the Green Team. It was formed in 2007. It's an advisory group to council, and the purpose is to advocate for a more resilient and sustainable basalt through supporting projects and topics such as waste reduction, improving energy efficiency, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and promoting sustainability. It's been quite a few projects over the years. I'll just highlight just a couple of them. The Green Team obtained a grant that enabled the existing solar that you see now on Community Pool to be installed, as well as hot water collectors. In the last few years, there was
Hey guys, is this, I don't know if it's Sarah or Susan talking. There's something very funky about the audio here. It's kind of, I don't know if anybody else is experiencing it, but it sounds, you know, like you're in the bottom of a pool or something. Can you get closer to a speaker, or do we have multiple devices on or something?
I think it's pretty echoey.
Yeah, it's very.
So Sarah, why don't you come over and take my place here?
Sure.
Okay.
Did you want to get the presentation going? I can just give you the thumbs up.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
But,
So just continue, just a couple of highlighted projects. The Green Team supported a significant rewrite of the town's sustainable building regulations, requiring green building techniques. There's different pathways to meet those green building techniques, and also requiring a continuing education component, which is a pretty, I guess, a progressive thing to be requiring. The Green Team also obtained a grant through the Colorado Energy Office to significantly offset the first level 3 electric vehicle charger in the Mid-Valley, which is positioned right outside of Town Hall, and it's used daily. Do a slide. So Green Team is successful due to its partnership between members and its many community partners, including CORE, Holy Cross Electric, Aspen Global Change Institute, Rocky Mountain Institute, Sunset Solar, and Full Circle Construction. We currently have 3 members, and we are actively recruiting new members. So anyone out there who might be interested, please contact me at the planning office, and we'd be happy to get you more information as to how you might become a member of the Green Team. In recent years, the town has stepped up to show its support for green initiatives. In 2017, the town adopted the Climate Action Plan for the Eagle County community, along with the Basalt Addendum. In 2018, the town joined as a member community to CC4CA, as well as provide those significant updates to the town's sustainable building regulations. In 2019, the town council passed a resolution declaring a climate emergency. And in 2020, the council adopted the new master plan that prioritizes green goals with approaches to issues related to climate change. So CORE provides a yearly summary. CORE is the Community Office of Resource Efficiency, and they provide a yearly summary of how our partnership has helped to advance Basalt's climate action goals. So I'm going to briefly turn the presentation over to Five Filerman, who's the Community Sustainability Manager with CORE, to summarize these successes.
Great. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, what Sarah has is our kind of status report or update on the impacts of some of the work that we've done in the town of Basalt. And you'll see our impacts are both in terms of energy efficiency, carbon emissions, as well as economic. And we like to work kind of in 4 different areas. Rebates, which I suspect most of you are very familiar with. That's where if you do some green initiative on your home or business, we rebate that. And you'll see in 2019, we worked on 35 homes in the Basalt community and then 9 businesses. And we've changed our program a little bit from just giving rebates to what we call our path to net zero, which is really to more directly support our members' community action or climate action plans. So now instead of just you do something, you get a rebate, you now have to get the assessment and talk to one of our advisors, and we really map out a plan for how you not only can take a single action, but what you can do over time to continually make your house more energy efficient and carbon neutral. You know, the other aspect of which we done a lot of work with in Basalt, that you'll see is grants, kind of over on the right-hand side there, the almost $125,000 provided and $105,000 new grants. And that work, you know, is very much kind of connected to the Green Team's work. You know, the Green Team has specific projects that they put forth, updating the sustainable building codes or wanting to support Basalt Vista or some other, you know, big projects. And we will provide, and we've provided technical assistance and then often some financing to create demonstration projects that we believe move the whole market, you know, by showing them that these technologies are realistic and doable, and then hopefully also increasing the knowledge in our workforce, which ultimately supports the communities to move that direction. And I guess some of the projects we've worked on recently are, you know, we've helped out technical advising on the pool, which we're really excited about. So the building codes, obviously Basalt Vista has been a project that we think Basalt should be really proud of and that we've worked on. We're working with DECA on electrification, the ski code housing in Willits right now, as well as the Aspen Global Change Institute. So that's, I think, a pretty good summary. Sarah, is there anything else that you can think of?
Not off the top of my head. Thank you very much for sharing those, though. It's a great partnership. I'll just move on then. So through the master planning process, Basalt citizens have prioritized projects they'd like to see accomplished. And the number one project is to make yearly capital investments of around $100,000 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And this idea originally was born out of the Climate Action Plan, but when Basalt citizens were able to vote on projects during that master plan process, this also rose to the top. So the Green Team has ideas for large capital investment projects that could include, the master plan's large capital investment projects could include a significant solar project, work towards electrification of buildings, waste reduction, et cetera. Another thing that CORE does is to provide a greenhouse gas inventory report every 3 years. And from the 2017 report, we've learned that buildings are the #1 contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation is second and growing, and waste is third and quite a bit behind, actually. So with this in mind, the Green Team has began to explore projects and creating a draft budget for their 2021 work plan to bring to discussion with Council tonight. The budget is slightly lower than was requested in 2020. And you can see this table that we have on the screen has been included in your packet. The first line item is categories for membership and dues, and these include the CC4CA, the Climate Action Collaborative, and CORE. The second is programs and commitments. These are things that have generally been ongoing, like the annual leaf drop and contributions to the Basalt Vista project. The third line item is for education, outreach, and code updates. And the fourth is what I'd like to focus on today, and that is those large investments per the Master Plan and Climate Action Plan that we just spoke about. Next one. The Green Team has brainstormed projects for the 2021 work plan for those large investment examples. And the first would be partnering with the RE1 school district on a significant capital project. And this could look like something like installing solar PV on the school building. The second would be partnering with CORE and Holy Cross Energy on a project. This could be increasing rebates that these organizations already offer for energy efficient projects, or helping local restaurants to reduce energy costs and greenhouse gas emissions. And the third project would be partnering with Holy Cross Energy on a project that comes out of their recent RFP for clean energy projects, which my understanding is that will be selected in the next couple of months, so we'll know more about what those projects are actually going to look like. And lastly, there's one additional thing that came out of discussion with the Green Team, and that was a discussion about hiring a part-time community safety officer that may be responsible for education and enforcement on such items as our 2-minute idling law, as well as wildlife protection and other things as they come up. So I'd like to ask at this point if the Green Team and supporters have anything that you'd like to include. Does anybody like to speak up? And if we have nobody, then I would say let's open it to council for direction where you'd like to see the Green Team move in 2021.
Susan, are you going to lead this part of the discussion, or are you just looking for?
Well, I think this is a really good, opportunity for the council to kind of ask questions of the Green Team or the programs that were being proposed, and to provide any feedback. One thing that Sarah didn't point out is that when we adopted the Climate Action Plan, we did put targets for greenhouse gas emissions, and so when you guys do see the greenhouse gas inventory report, you do get targets on how much we've been able to reduce, and those are kind of on a schedule. We aren't able to do them right now every year, but that is a good opportunity for benchmarking in terms of trying to determine whether our programs are making strides towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I would just really like to hear from the council, particularly if they have any questions on any of the programs that the Green Team is proposing to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind leading off. I'm very enthusiastic and supportive of the idea of more solar at the school, using school roof structure for PV, and I know we did one pretty significant array at the middle school. That's been a few years, but I worry we're running out of roof space. Is there lots of room? Roof space is a scarce resource. Is there room left for more? And what might be the scope of that? Is there some initial thinking about how big an array it would be, and what the economics of the deal and what the yield might be? Can you put a little color on that one?
I might look to 5 for a little bit more background. They've had some discussions initially with the school. We've had some discussions with the school more from a practical standpoint. We were initially talking because we were going to try to offset some of the greenhouse gas from the pool. And so the schools seem to be receptive to looking at solar. The issue is they can't penetrate the roof, but they were willing to do that. And I don't know, Fi, if you can add any more information on that.
Not offhand, no. I think the next step is really for us, if we get direction from council, to reach out to the school as the Green Team.
Yeah, I think you'll get a pretty receptive audience at the school, and I think there was room. Jerry Terwilliger is very familiar with the phase. I think we did have a phased plan for the middle school photovoltaic system, and that would be some low-hanging fruit for a project next year to add more renewable. So that one, I think, would be really worth pursuing.
And we don't have Mary. Oh, go ahead.
If we were done with that, I had one I wanted to bring up as well, but I can wait if there's more comments on that.
No, go ahead. Okay,
the cars idling for greater than 2 minutes is pretty common. It's not healthy for those around. It's a lot of greenhouse gases, everything. I think having a part-time resource would be something interesting to learn more about, to help with enforcement and education and all those things. If word got out that, hey, you can't let your car run while you go in somewhere, that would be nice. Because right now it feels like you can just do that. Anecdotally, of course. That's just my perception.
Didn't we have a resource officer that did that for a little while?
We did. We had a resource officer who did that for a little while, and he was very good at it. But you are correct. Nobody seems to pay any attention anymore. This would be one of my favorite things to take care of, is to get somebody to do that. And it's, perhaps you would even end up hiring this resource officer full time. He or she would have a lot of different other projects they could do in addition to the wildlife, the idling, parking, who knows.
What happened to that position?
So just a quick update on the position is
Hey, Brian, we lost your sound. Did we drop the call?
Yeah, I think you need to unmute one of your laptops and tell them.
Here, I'll go get it. Okay. Hey, we're still connected Zoom-wise. Do you know what
So it's just the same problem we've been having.
So do we, but we're connected to Zoom. I mean, we're connected to Germantown right now. So I hang up and start over? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. What time is it? I was just sitting there thinking how lucky we are.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are more than 20 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
So
Thanks, Ryan.
We're good. Go like this.
We're good?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as I was saying, we do have a position that was budgeted for, and then Chief Knott was able to, he's almost got a full staff, but he's one down at this point. And so he would be able to bring back Community Resource Officer, and he's on, so he might be able to chime in if I've missed anything. Good, Chief? Okay. And so at any rate, a full-time position is full, and I think, as far as just focusing on idling, I don't think that's the expectation, but, that along with a number of other items would be the responsibility of an officer like that.
Yeah, Jerry, this is Bill Kane. Do you recall the middle school TV project, whether we had more room up there, or did we max that roof surface out, or is there lots of room out there for more work with the school district on roof surfaces?
Well, that project is not on the roof. They would not let us put it on the roof. It's actually, we had to build kind of a structure in front of the school to put it. Now,
oh, that's right, yeah.
I don't recollect whether there's a lot more out there or not. I think there's room for some, but I don't think there's room for twice as much.
Yeah. How about at the high school?
Well, you would think there'd be a lot of room there if we could figure out if they won't let us on the roof. They won't let us penetrate the roof. I'm just wondering if there isn't some way to put something on a roof that will stay there in a high wind without penetrating the roof to anchor it down.
Yeah, that anchoring would be an issue for sure.
And the high school, it's kind of like Vista. You're getting up against that hill, although they think Vista's going to do fine with solar, so the high school probably should too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all flat roof, so it's not like, yeah, there would have to be some.
It'd be something like, something like there is at the middle school, put a kind of a structure off the side of it. It's hanging on the school, but it's not on the roof.
Yeah, but we can't flush mount them, obviously. They're flat and would not get the maximum radiation, so. At any rate, that'd be worth pursuing for sure. You know, a question I would have, and this is be kind of fun green team item, is that it seems like the centerpiece for greenhouse gas reduction is obviously weaning away from fossil fuels, and in the residential context, that means transition from natural gas and propane to electric. It'd be really good to know what the state of the art is here in terms of home heating and what the relative economies are and what the efficiency of electric is now, or whether we're just trading one evil for another. Are you guys up on that? And are we ready to start investigating incentives or inducements for people to go all electric as opposed to natural gas or propane heating? And I at least may know from CORE and other efforts that are going on in the Valley what the state of play there is. But it'd be really interesting to know if there are proactive things we can do at a council level to encourage a shift to electric as opposed to fossil fuel consuming systems.
Everybody, this is Spy with CORE, and there's a lot of things actually going on in the Valley. CORE has stopped rebating any natural gas upgrades. The Holy Cross is rolling out an electrification program with rebates and things. As Sarah, I know, and Sarah, you can interrupt me, but was talking to RMI. They're putting together an electrification community forum, and unfortunately, I think it got postponed, but she and I have been talking about joining that. They're going to focus more on what policies and things that communities can adopt. It's definitely ready. The big policies that communities are starting to adopt are, there's certain communities that are outlawing natural gas, no natural gas. Those are things that definitely could be investigated for Basalt. The question of whether or not we're there yet. Heat pumps are the biggest technology that we really need people to adopt. And that's what they're doing at Basalt Vista, as well as what we're doing at the Ski-Co property and Aspen Global Change Institute are all putting in heat pumps so that we really can start to try to get more industry professionals who are familiar with that familiar enough with that technology that it's dependable and can get the costs down. So
this is ground source heat pumping?
No, it's a heat pump. It's like an air source, backwards air conditioner.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
What's the latest ambient temperature on new heat pumps? Just curious now.
Mary, do you know that? I don't know.
Yes, I do. So it's Mary Weiner with Holy Cross. Good evening, everybody. So there are specifically cold climate air source, or you can go air to water heat pumps. And the Gant in Aspen has them, and they were working at -20 a couple winters ago.
Oh.
So, yeah, so they do work. If you look like Mitsubishi or Bosch, the heat pumps will say they go down to -4 or -13. They have inverter technology currently that helps them get to that. And they've worked even colder, but that's what they say they'll work at. So we know they work in our territory. The caveat is, and what we learned at Basalt Vista is, if you don't install them correctly, if you put them on the ground, the outside condensing unit, they will freeze up and have a lot of condensation. So really educating the local contractors on how to install them correctly is going to be important. And so there's got to be a lot of education around there. them. There is going to be a workshop that Rocky Mountain Science Center over in Avon is going to host. And I'll be talking at it on August 26th at 3 p.m. And Sarah and Susan, I'll send you the invite that you can send to the council and mayor. See if you guys want to listen to it so you get a little bit more educated on it. It's going to be done by Mitsubishi. So there's a lot of good manufacturers out there. We're agnostic on who we recommend on manufacturer, but Fi is absolutely right. It's about heat pump water heaters and HVAC, heating and cooling. They both do both heating and cooling. And then even induction cooktop ranges to get rid of your gas stove. So we will be rolling out rebates, incentives to go from gas or propane to that. And also we have a custom rebate if you are willing to go all electric on new construction. So we're really excited to bring that program out very soon.
Outstanding. Wow.
Bill, let me just kind of lift off, because I mean, all of this technical stuff is super great, but I'd love to ask the Green Team to take a look at our strategic framework, specifically the environment section, and help us add a little bit of meat to the bones there. The environment section was probably the thinnest in the original strategic framework, and I think it would really benefit from circulation and invitation to the Green Team to help us expand upon some of the target areas. The things that I'm also interested in are kind of the strategic orientations that we can take as a town to better protect and preserve the green environment, to more directly intervene in protecting water quality, water quantity, and then promoting energy supply and demand side management, which was a topic of conversation last fall when we gathered over at Basalt Vista with Brian Hannigan and John Katzenberg and some of the RMI folks to talk about the kinds of small initiatives, medium-sized initiatives, and large-scale initiatives that we could undertake to really drive meaningful change in greenhouse gas emissions. And I bring that up as a point because CORE did some absolutely incredible benchmarking looking at Basalt's greenhouse gas emissions by sector. Most is coming from buildings, and we know what we are emitting, therefore we can set that as a target, and that then becomes the benchmark that Elise and I were talking about. But so I guess I'd love to invite the Green Team to have a look at our strategic framework, see what they can do to capitalize on their own expertise and knowledge, invite input from AGCI, the RMI folks, and others who have relevant knowledge, and help us expand in the definition of our objectives, but also in advancing the benchmarks and targets that we'll measure against. And most of them are there, frankly. It's simply a matter of compiling them, if you will.
Okay. Susan, maybe we could do that is serve up our strategic plan framework to the Green Team and get some thoughts back. That might be a good thing to undertake.
Sure. Elise wanted to speak, Mayor, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
First of all, can somebody remind me, the existing targets, are those for the entire town of Basalt, including residential and commercial property, or is that for the municipal properties of Basalt?
It's all of Basalt, everything, including all those sectors of waste and transportation and buildings, et cetera.
Okay, but do we have a baseline for that?
Yes, we're using the 2014 data as our base mark, as our base inventory. And we can send you the last report. I think we made a modest reduction. It was like 4%. 4%.
Very modest.
Very modest, but we saw also during that time period a tremendous amount of growth. So the fact that we actually had a reduction is pretty significant, because that's the challenge, right? I mean, we built a lot of buildings and had a lot of growth. So to actually have a reduction is pretty notable.
Yeah.
So another idea that I want to throw out there, sort of building upon Jerry's idling officer idea, and I don't know how this would work because obviously these would be two different departments, but I would love to see, you know, maybe a part-time sustainability officer. I know, Sarah, you love this stuff, but you're pretty overloaded. It would be great to have somebody who was dedicated to, you know, being on top of the rebate, being on top of the education, being on top of, you know, envisioning some programs for reductions. And if that's not a, you know, I'm sure it could easily be a full-time position, but if it wasn't desired to be a full-time position, you could be part-time with that idling officer or combined with some other needs that we have in the town. So just an idea to consider.
Any other council comments? Well, I would just say that.
No,
go ahead.
But Susan, I would just, I don't, this may be out of sequence here, but I just want to make sure that the Green Team knows how much they're valued in this town. And, you know, when you look at that slide we saw earlier in the evening with the list of accomplishments, this is a really great contribution to the community and has really helped, you know, build an environmental ethic in the town. And this is really good stuff, and it's been around for a long time. I, you know, wrangled with Jerry back in 09 and 10, and we did a good number of things from micro hydro to PV, and, you know, some good stuff got going. And I'm really very pleased to see that they're still in business and making great strides. And I just know it's a big priority for everybody on this council to make sure the Green Team succeeds and they're getting what they need. So just want to make sure that's said before we move on to another item.
No, I think actually that's probably a good conclusion. Go ahead.
Okay. Can I
I was just
piggyback?
going to say, and kudos for going the heat pump route for Arbany Pool. Since we were talking about heat pumps being the greatest new technology, so that didn't get mentioned, so I wanted to throw that out there and acknowledge it.
Great.
Can I just piggyback on one thing that Bill said? I've been on the Green Team since 2007, but we only have 3 members now. So I would hope that every one of you would think about somebody who would like to join, who would contribute to the Green Team. We need some new members. It'd be nice to have 1 or 2 younger ones too. Thank you.
That's well taken, and I promise I'll be making some calls.
So with that, I think
we're invited to come. Yeah, we can come anytime we want, can't we? Or we're not like persona non grata at Green Team meetings, are we, councilors?
well, as a general rule, we just might want to talk through that. I know that Ryan asked that if you could come and be introduced to the Green Team and meet them, that works really, really well. Just a note that we had a big discussion with council membership on committees in the last year, and kind of the end takeaway was that councilors would not be members or participate in meetings just because it tends to take over. There was a lot of reasons, but one was just that it kind of takes over the work of the group rather than the citizens.
Okay. But we'll do it in a structured way.
Yeah.
So doesn't disrupt the business.
So.
Okay.
So we have one more Green Team item. So Bill, do you want to introduce that, and then Sarah and Elise can jump in on that one?
Yeah. Yeah. Our next item is a resolution. It's resolution number 30, series of 2020. It's a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, supporting the 2020 and 2021 update to the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, CC4CA policy statement. Sarah and Elise. So. Yeah, this is good stuff. So why don't you guys present it, and we will bring it to a vote.
Thanks. I'll give some information on this, and then Councilor Huddle, chime in as you'd like to add anything. I also want to let you know that we do have Jacob Smith. He is the Executive Director of CC4CA on the line here today, so he may add some valuable information and answer any questions that Council may have. So in 2018, the Council voted to join the organization Colorado Communities for Climate Action, better known as CC4CA for those who don't know, to help further the goals of Basalt's Climate Action Plan. And CC4CA is a coalition of local governments across the state that advocate for stronger state and federal climate policy. And when Basalt joined, I believe we were the 15th community. And today there are a total of 34 member communities, including from our immediate area, Glenwood Springs, Carbondale, Aspen, as well as Pitkin County. So we're pretty well positioned up here in the Roaring Fork Valley. CC4CA has become an impactful voice for clean air, climate action, and public health protection in our state. Each June, the Board of Directors meet to discuss and set the policy agenda for the upcoming year, and the policy statement guides CC4CA's policy positions at the state's legislative sessions and support of or dissent towards proposed bills. CC4CA has proven that so much more can be accomplished with a collective voice than individual communities alone. So in your packet, there's been included some of the highlights of the 2020 legislative sessions, and hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. The policy statement, which has been included as Exhibit A to the resolution, must be supported by all member communities in order for it to be adopted. So again, hopefully you have time to read through this document. It includes policy positions regarding statewide and local climate strategies, energy generation, energy efficiency, transportation, fossil fuel extraction, solid waste reduction, and other general policies that I believe are in line with Basalt's climate action goals. So staff does support the Council approving Resolution Number 30, Series of 2020, supporting CC4CA's 2020-2021 policy statements. And again, if you have any questions, or I could turn this over to Jacob if you have anything you would like to add, or Councilor Huddle.
Any questions, guys?
I just want to say I've had the pleasure of attending 3 meetings so far for CC4CA, and it is quite an unusual organization in that even with 34 voices, it's very collaborative. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of recognition of different viewpoints, and working through this policy statement took into consideration that, not everybody is, gung-ho for climate change. There are some communities that are part of this coalition who have constituents that are a little on the conservative side, particularly because they may work in the gas and oil industry or something to that effect. And I mean, I'm really impressed with the way that this policy statement took into consideration all of those different viewpoints. So I would really encourage you guys to endorse it.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions relative to the resolution?
I have one question, clarifying question.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the market-based approach to greenhouse gas reductions, and I noticed it's under like a state priority from a policy perspective. Is CC4CA doing anything at the federal level from an advocacy perspective? I think that's how you make a market-based approach the most efficient and most cost-effective. Just was curious about that, if you guys had any information.
Jacob, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. The positions in the policy statement they're really broad policy positions, so they reflect the views of the coalition on economy-wide carbon pollution mechanisms that applies at the federal level. We don't invest much in the way of resources at the federal level because there just isn't the opportunity to get anything done there. So we're really focused on the venues where we think we can have a meaningful impact, as opposed to just being a voice but without any impact. Just given how the size of the organization, we're very lean. We want to make sure we're investing our bandwidth in the places where we're actually going to show results. That said, we do play at the federal level. It's much more of a long game. We have relationships with the delegation. We are constantly engaging around those opportunities. We're thinking about how do we make sure that we're set up so that if opportunities present themselves at the federal level, that we are able to actually get something done to jump on those. So the federal universe is very much on our map, but we hold back until we see an opportunity to actually move the ball somewhere meaningful there.
Makes sense. So I appreciate that too. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions on the resolution? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion on resolution number 30, series of 2020. There a motion to approve the resolution as drafted?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 30, series of 2020, a resolution of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, supporting the 2021 update to Colorado Communities for Climate Action, C4CA policy statement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Pam, I think we should call the roll on this, maybe?
Absolutely. That's the rule. Okay, so let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. David Knight.
Yes.
Bill Kane.
Yes.
Bill Infante.
Yes.
Len Drummond.
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody on the green team. We really appreciate it, and we'll get you some help. You need some more members, so appreciate Jerry's comment about that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Have a good evening.
Thank you for joining, Jacob.
You bet.
Okay, the next piece of work for us is to receive a financial update. And this is going to be July, which is actually June sales tax report and financial projection update. So Christy, you've been working hard collecting taxes, obviously. So you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. As the real benefit of doing a monthly report is that you guys become extremely useful, or it becomes extremely useful because you get to see it on a fairly quick basis as far as what is going on, and you understand all the information in there where it's at. So I'm going to try to keep it brief, but just be sure to let me know if you have any questions. So as you might have read, and I'm sorry that this was late into the report, I just got the information from the state yesterday, so working to compile this as quickly as I could to get it in our first August meeting so everybody has the information as soon as possible. But our July sales tax numbers were incredibly high compared to even the prior year, with a 26.3% increase. Now, half of that increase, roughly 13% of it, was because of back sales tax that was collected in the month of July. The other 13% was because of these sectors as noted here: retail food and retail sales, and sporting retail, telecommunication, building, and retail liquor. And the same category saw a significant decline as the prior month: lodging and restaurants. Mostly due to the COVID impacts, I'm sure. So as a result of that, the revenue model anticipated $599,000 in sales tax collections for the month, and we received in $710,000, including the back taxes collected for this month. And that played into a year-to-date sales tax increase number of 15.4%. or 544,000 year over year. It's significant. And there's a lot of drivers with that, some local and some because of the new sales tax rules at the state for the online, as we've been reporting monthly. So, so any questions on this report before I move into the financial modeling?
Hey, Christy, yeah, a quick question. With sales tax receipts running so far ahead of projection, is there any Tabor issue? I think I have a hunch what the answer is, but I'm curious.
So because we had an election in 2019, we have to be thoughtful of our general fund and restricted fund revenues collected for this year, because this is our benchmark year, similar to what happened with the tobacco tax. We believe still, even with these projection numbers, that we're still within the bounds that we have, that we stated were our maximums. So, so we believe we kept enough room for ourselves to make sure we don't have a problem with that, but we'll continue to monitor it for you.
Okay, is there any kind of premeditative action that we might want to take if at the end of August, if receipts continue to look very strong with the Christmas season upcoming? I mean, it would, what do we do? How do we plan so that we don't have to take the kind of action we did suspending the tobacco tax?
At this point, I mean, the sales tax numbers and the numbers that we would collect would have to be very extremely high for us to come into that problem. And I don't foresee that at this point in time. What we would need to do is look at our revenue streams and just make sure that we're not bringing sources into the general fund that weren't necessary. And that would be the actions that we would take to mitigate that, just to make sure, or into our restricted funds.
I just have to reflect on how incredible it is that we're even having this conversation at this point of the year, particularly when the rest of the country is not enjoying this kind of result.
Yeah, some of my colleagues.
Uh-oh. Stop.
Dial? Oh, yeah, the Zoom, sorry, you have to hang up.
Hold it, go ahead. Go, Vijay.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by, please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 18 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Appreciate the effort. I think this basically warrants, just basically staying focused on the fact that we still have plenty of turbulence ahead, and to the extent we can judiciously address, our town concerns down the road here with these surprising funds is something we should be focused on. So we're lucky.
Sure are.
Any questions on the July sales tax report for Christy from council? Any additional questions, comments?
Are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. So financial update. So some of the same that we just talked about in the sales tax, that I actually, sales tax being such a large portion of our normal revenue base, that drives our numbers on the financials for the revenue side for our general fund as well. So our last month's results, we estimated a revenue reduction totaling $143,745 compared to budget. And now we've turned the tide really, and now we're looking at a revenue increase of 221,000. Mostly due to our sales tax increases. Those are very significant increases, I would say, year to date, and then also coupled with our building permits that have been collected this year, which for everybody that could have gone decided to go this year. And we see a lot of building, as you guys see around town as well. That'll help with our revenue base into the future. We still have some delayed expenses that that are currently implemented that we're going to have more conversation around during the budget process. So stay tuned on that. You know, the next page pretty much depicts where we could be at in our fund balance towards the end of the year. Now, Ryan stated we have about a $5.8 million fund balance, which is true. This includes some of our restricted funding with TABOR. So just so you understand that difference. And so when we're looking at 6.6 million of potential ending fund balance, you know, on our general operating unrestricted, really approximately about 6.2 million of that is unrestricted funding. And so that plays into some conversations there. I guess the other thing that had happened this month too is we received in, as I stated in our June 30th, a lot of the property tax that we were thinking might be delayed because of some concern around the economy, but we haven't seen that. People have pretty much paid their property taxes on time. So it's a much less impact on that line item than we originally anticipated. Anyway, this information is going to be great for budgeting revenues, and starting to work on that is going to be the next step.
Great news. Any questions from council?
Can I ask a somewhat unrelated question?
Sure.
I'm just curious what the Basalt Box program, how that's looking, you know, what we propose to spend and versus what's actually come back so far, because I think the deadline for that is coming up pretty quickly here.
Mm-hmm. So I went around to our participating businesses, many of them at least. I didn't quite hit all of them, but to thank them and to talk to them about the program, and we've also distributed some additional Basalt Bucks to help with the program and to stimulate that. Currently, we're at about around 20% that's of the vouchers that have been received so far of the total. I haven't compiled the information, but I can provide that additional estimate at the next council meeting because I heard from a lot of the participating vendors that they're holding on to the vouchers and are going to just remit them once at the end of the whole process. So it's hard to say with the total of that, but we can have something of an estimate for you either the next council meeting in August or the first one in September for sure.
And then sort of the direction my brain is going with that is, should we be thinking about a secondary kind of economic stimulus idea if there's still money left from either from this first effort or still in the CARES Act funding that we received?
Yeah, you know, Ryan and I have talked a little bit about that already as far as some possibilities with that. Part of it is that the sales tax numbers are high, so a lot of our vendors, some of our vendors are doing well, others are struggling. I mean, so that's part of the nuance with this particular recession issue is how to target those businesses that are struggling and some of the other needs of the community, because there are a lot of needs in this community, as you guys all know, during this pandemic time, and how best to address those now. So Ryan, did you have some thoughts around that?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Okay. So you have more to come on that for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Any other questions from council before we move on? Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.
Oh, this takes us to council actions, and we have a public hearing and first reading for ordinance number 16, series of 2020. It's an ordinance of the town council of the town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Basalt Municipal Code, Chapter 16 zoning, Chapter 17 subdivisions, Chapter 18 building regulations, and Chapter 7 health, sanitation, and animals, and Chapter 13 municipal utilities related to wildfire protection. So Jeff and Susan and Rick Bout will lead us through this discussion, and we'll consider the ordinance for wildfire protection.
So this is a public hearing, and it's our first reading on our ordinance. And since we had a whole hour of a work session at the last meeting, I thought what I would do is summarize the materials that are in the packet and some of the materials that I presented before, and give an update for the council and for the public that are listening. We have some of our team that worked on our wildfire protection ordinance here on the call. From the fire district, we have John Melly, who's our fire marshal and is really the key person that brought the need to do the regulations and brought with him the work that he had already done with the town of Snowmass Village. And we also have Rick Bout on our Zoom call. He's the Basalt building official, and you might want to ask him questions as we get a little bit deeper into this. And of course we have Jeff Conklin, who's kind of the third leg of our three-party attorney, fire department, and town planning staff that worked on that. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now. I don't have Brooke on, right? I don't have anybody else. Correct, John? So just as a reminder, this is a public hearing, so if you could email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and phone number when we actually open the public hearing, we'll call you. We were only going to provide a minute of time during the time that the public hearing is open. There is a delay between the grassroots watching the TV and the actual meetings, so that gives enough time for that. Just a note, we worked with an informal committee from the Roaring Fork Fire Authority. We had John Melly and Brooks Scott. And then from CARP New Hanlon, we had Jeff Conklin, and also one of the other attorneys in his office, Richard Peterson Kramer, did a lot of the work on the ordinance that we have in front of you today. And then again, noted from planning and building, you had Rick Bout, the building official, myself, and James Lint. Everybody remembers the Lake Christine fire. These were just pictures we included in the last presentation, and then John Melly added this slide that just had to do with the kind of the ember shower, which is really a lot of what these regulations are really addressing. Again, mentioned before in our meeting, our strategic work plan specifically asked us this year to provide regulations, fire-ready solutions on new construction. But I also wanted to note that this subject about fire and fire protection was really at the forefront of people's thinking when we prepared the master plan. They were particularly concerned with emergency access. The master plan had a lot of different statements about climate action and the resulting high risk of wildfire, and that we needed to look at new tools to address them. Just talking about the fear of fire, where our goals and objectives again started addressing that we wanted to require new development to utilize fire hardening of materials and encouraging homeowners to use fire vegetation protection. Again, in our greenhouse, our sustainability section of the plan, again, we had language addressing pursuing code changes. So the good news was we didn't have to start from scratch because the town of Snowmass Village had done a lot of work already. But what was kind of important to us is to put these requirements in the right sections of our municipal code and then to tailor them more to meet the town of Basalt's needs. And so that's what we did. We took the regulations and we organized them into 5 different chapters in our code, and the first 3 are ones that really deal with new construction. So this is new construction or remodels that are at a higher level. They are caught by these 3 chapters, and then the last 2, chapters 7 and 13, really deal with the entirety of town. So they pertain to whether you have new construction or not. So one really important thing for everyone in the community to realize is that areas subject to wildfire hazards in the town of Basalt is all land within the town of Basalt, and that's really important because particularly on the new construction portions, it pertains to all of Basalt, whether you're up on Basalt Ridge or you're in Elk Run or South Side. So the first set of amendments formalize what we do already. This is in chapter 16 that deals with our zoning regulations. It just formalizes the land use application referral process, and it mentions that the fire department's using guidelines issued by the Colorado State Forest Service. The changes to chapter 17 subdivision are very similar to the chapter 16. Again, it formalizes the land use application and referral process for subdivisions, and it kind of emphasizes the need to address adequate access in the subdivision process. So the most important changes that we're dealing with really are included in chapter 18, where we discuss building regulations. And the most important thing that we're doing has the star on the slide. Oh my goodness, I've been going through a whole slide presentation and I looked up at the screen and it's not sharing. Just a second. Sarah, could you help me for a second? I'm trying to get my PowerPoint here.
I was gonna interrupt you, but I thought that was
No, that was you. You should have said something.
Sorry. So, go to the screen, and we'll go to share screen, and then which one do you want?
I want the PowerPoint down here.
Yeah, can't you just share the screen? Pick on, yeah, there you go. It should be on. Share screen.
It's really weird. Here, Pam, can you do it? So I'll just kind of continue on for a minute. On chapter 18, the most important thing that we're doing is really the hardening of structures. We've organized this in terms of different requirements. Can you just go back to that? I'm just going to talk from the slide. Go back to that. Yeah. There are requirements in the code regarding fences. The first 36 inches next to the habitable structure must be fire-resistant material. There's standards for exterior doors, windows, decks, and accessory structures. And just one really important note that the regulations are addressing new construction, new regulations in addition to what's already included in the town code. So by way of example, the town has adopted the fire code, and the town has adopted several international codes, and they deal with fire today. The regulations that we're including here are in addition to that. There's the section in Chapter 18 addresses applicability. It's allowing some exceptions. By way of example, you can have small sheds that are under 200 feet. There are thresholds for repair. In other words, if you're doing a level 3 repair, then you're going to be caught by the regulations. And if there's anything that's caught by our sustainability, Ryan can't hear you. Oh, really? Yeah. So here, go for it, please. Here. Okay, so.
Do you want me to share my screen? Like
You can just
This one's working too, if you wanna
So,
email them.
but where's the thing? So, can you help me, Sue, maybe? Is it, I was trying to check.
So they can't hear me at all? Pam?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Can you go back to that share thing? There we go. Okay. So maybe from current slide?
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 18 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
So just a question, what's the last thing that you heard me say? Apparently the call dropped. Can you hear me now? I don't think.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Susan, Susan, you were about to talk about the building regulations in Chapter 18 and those being kind of the most substantive
Okay.
items.
Okay, so if I repeat this a little bit, I apologize, but because the most important thing that we're doing here is addressing the hardening of new buildings and all new additions. There are requirements regarding fences. The closest 36 inches next to the habitable structure must be fire-resistant material. There are standards for exterior doors, windows, decks, and accessory structures. I think it's important to note that our current adopted codes already include standards addressing fires, like we do have the adopted fire code. So these are things that aren't covered by those regulations. A good example of that is addressing. The current code requires how big your lettering has to be and your addressing lettering, and that you need to be able to see it from the street. But this regulation deals with the fact that the lettering has to be on fire-resistant material. There's some applicability. It's not including everything that requires a building permit, and it does apply to things maybe that don't necessarily have to have a building permit. There are some exceptions. You can have small sheds, by way of example, that are under 200 feet, so you can still order your shed from, go down to Lowe's or order it on Wayfair. There are thresholds for repair, so if you're doing a repair or remodel and you're at what under the building code they call a level 1 or level 2, you're not going to be caught. But if you're a level 3, you're going to be caught by these new regulations. And we tried to make it kind of match up with our sustainability building regulations. So if you're caught under that review, you're going to be caught under this. And one really important thing is that it's going to prevail over HOA requirements. So if your HOA said you could have low-cost wood shingles on your roof, these regulations would prevail over that. One of the things that we added, since you saw it at the work session, is we added language that the TRC, that's the Technical Review Committee, that after consultation with the fire department and the building official, they may exempt some construction. And this was just kind of looked at as a practical matter of, so for way of example, there are thresholds when you're replacing a roof, when you're going to be caught by these regulations. But let's say that it was November and the snow was going to fall. This would be an easy one for the technical review committee to let you proceed and not meet these regulations. And then if we saw a lot of the same kind of request, we would take back amendments to the building regulations section of this. In chapters, so now those first 3 chapters, they dealt with new construction. So they dealt with new construction and building permits. Now we're getting to things that are going to be town-wide. So these amendments in chapter 17, that's health, sanitation, and animals. That will apply to all properties in town. It addresses requirements on the storage of fuel and debris on the lots that can cause or spread fires. And this is one area that we did make some changes to what you saw at the last meeting. For way of example, we, on number 1 under that regulations, we said roofs and gutters must be kept reasonably clear of debris, and we added the word reasonably. And then on number 5 of that code provision had to deal with the storage of firewood. And we changed the language to say, except for retail sales outdoor, firewood, wood piles must be stacked on a parallel contour, a minimum of 15 feet away from any structure within a closed fire-resistant box or under appropriate protective covering. So we did make minor modifications to that to kind of address the fact that, by the way, 7-Eleven and Cassie's often sell wood outside their store. And then chapter 13, the municipal utilities. This really has to do with access of for firefighters and utility employees to access electrical and gas utilities, meters, regulators, and piping. And our schedule for adoption, we had the work session on July 28th. And then on August 4th, we had P&Z review and recommendations, and the P&Z unanimously recommended approval of the proposed amendments. And just a note, they were aware that really officially the P&Z doesn't make recommendations on all chapters of the code, but we kept them all together because it seemed to make sense that way. On Friday, August 7th, we did a televised presentation on grassroots. And the purpose of this is to respond to counselor comments at the last meeting about reaching out to the building community. So we held that session and we advertised it. Rick Fout, the building official, sent out notice to about 140 different contractors and builders. We put it on the news section of the web page, the town's webpage, and we did have an ad in the newspaper on that. And you can still watch that if you want to by going to grassroots, and then you go to the town of Basalt, and it's under the building department. And then tonight we're here with the blue arrow, August 11th. That's our first reading. We're looking for the council to vote to approve it on first reading and have second reading in 2 weeks from now on August 25th. The effective date, I believe, is September 17th. And so our regulations pull in that date so that when you're reading the code, you know what the date the applications are submitted under. And this is just a note that we Other members of the staff are working on this, and the attorney's office are working on this fire ban ordinance, changes to that, some clarifications, and currently that is on a schedule to be reviewed on first reading on August 25th and September 8th. And this is just a drawing that is in one of the reports on Firewise building and materials. And I was going to turn it over to John Melly to maybe emphasize some of the items that I summarized. So John?
Good evening, Council. Sorry I'm talking to you in the dark again. I'm having trouble with the camera on this computer here. But the facts is that the conditions that determine if a house ignites in a wildfire, or particularly an ember shower, really is determined within the first 50 feet of that structure, and it includes the structure. What we're proposing is very much in line with every other city and county in the Roaring Fork Valley. That includes Pickens County, Eagle County, Snowmass Village. Basalt is still the only town where you could build a full wood home with wood shingles on the roof and cedar siding. In other words, there's no control over the structures. This is also very much in line with what the Colorado State Forest Service recommends for building in the wildfire urban interface. We believe that if homes are hardened with roof coverings, and that includes the vents and soffits, including clean gutters, you use non-combustible siding, and to clarify, if there are architectural features that you want to employ in a home, that doesn't mean it has to be sanitized and sterile. You can still add these features as long as you build that exterior wall with 1 hour siding. That's underneath the siding. Your near home landscaping is very much as important as a hardened structure, and your deck surface should be non-combustible. Once again, I speak not just for John Melly and the fire marshal, but I'm speaking for the Roaring Fork Fire Authority. Chief Thompson is very much on board with this as well. You know the conditions. It was the right decision to make several years ago, and it's the right decision to make for your community. I'm open to take questions about how you might accept this, and I believe it's the right thing for Basalt. Thanks.
You know, and I think the only other thing that you know, if we want to get into cost, this was just some results from that study that I included in the packet. And just to kind of note, I mean, I'll just flip through this is just part of a commentary that Rick Fout prepared and has on his building department page to kind of give more context of really what does it mean in terms of construction and what we're looking for. So with that, I think we could open it up for questions. I would just say, Jeff, was there anything else that you think that I should emphasize here?
I don't think so. I think you covered it pretty well. You know, the various provisions get introduced into different sections, in the appropriate sections of the code, and I think we could open it up to council questions and comments, and also public comment as a public hearing.
Comments from council, questions? John, I assume hardy board, which is really, you know, a cementatious siding material now, which is really prolific. You see it everywhere. I assume that will meet the 1 hour sort of rating you're looking for siding?
Yes, Mayor, it's definitely a part of that. The interior of that cementitious board would also have to have some beefing up in order to meet that 1 hour requirement. But it is somewhat of a standard throughout the valley, as I suggested before.
Yeah, great. Questions from council?
I just forgive my ignorance, but my understanding, I'm all for the protection factor, but I guess my question is, are there multiple materials that fall into these categories, or are we going to have like a homogeneous look now?
Great question.
Hey, Rick, you're on mute. Do you want to, John, you or Rick want to answer that one?
Sure, I'll jump in there. It wouldn't only be the cementatious siding to look like wood that would comply. Also, all stuccos, and I should say concrete stuccos, real stuccos, and masonries like bricks and stones, which we see on a lot of the homes and buildings as a wainscot down low at least. All of the masonry types of finishes would also comply, at least. It wouldn't just be that cementatious board. And really any architectural look can be achieved with just a bit more focus. Solid woods are quite fire resistant at certain sizes. So, our exposed log ridge beams and large truss features out at gable ends, things like that can be made to comply, and with just a little more focus and maneuvering, the architects and the owners can have their preferences. We can work through it by sometimes beefing up the wall below the proposed finished material on the outside, and I hope that explains a little bit further what your question was.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Susan, anything additional before we take this up?
No, I think we do need to go ahead and open the public hearing, and then there might be opportunities if people think of more questions they'd like to ask. Just a reminder to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number. And just to note that we were going to, on this time, just do it for 1 minute. So if you want to go ahead and open that, I'll start the clock.
Great. I will open the public hearing for ordinance number 16, series of 2020. It is 8:19 p.m. So please call in if you have comments or questions about ordinance number 16.
Elise, for questions like yours and others people listening in might be having, I want to direct you, Susan did it once, I'll do it again, to the building page of basalt.net, where I've taken the proposed codes and did sort of a reading between the lines of what we're going to have to do to comply to each one of them, giving several options like the masonry, the metal sidings, which are becoming a big popular architectural look. Those things easily work, as well as that cementatious board. But you're right, we don't want to get that generic homogenized look on every single building with the cementatious board everywhere, only where it's prudent. But read into my commentary / comparison at the Basalt Building Department page on basalt.net's
And Mayor,
site, please.
we did not get any indication that anybody wanted to speak during the public hearing portion of the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Susan. So what is the council's pleasure? Is there a motion to approve on first reading ordinance number 16, 2020, and set the public hearing for second reading for August 25?
And that's a continue and set.
I think Ryan's warming up here. There we go.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 16, series of 2020 on first reading and continue and set the public hearing and second reading for August 25th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Gotcha. I second.
Seconded. Moved and seconded by Mr. Infante. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask Pam to call the roll.
Absolutely. Begin with Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight.
Yes.
And Bill Infante.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. We will turn now to the last resolution of the evening. This is a resolution of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, designating the authorized signatories for the Town of Basalt. Christy and Jeff.
You bet. Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and this one's fairly straightforward. One of the things that Ryan touched on in the strategic update was some of our accomplishments in relation to fiscal transparency and accountability, and looking at all of our different processes and procedures, and just making sure to tighten things up and look at our internal controls. And so this is just a cleanup item as we've been looking at, adding an account for the TACA, for example. We do have the authorization to do that specifically for that need, but however, it just really begged the question about all of our accounts and who should be authorized signers on all of our accounts for transparency. And so all this resolution does is pretty much says for all of our accounts that myself, the town clerk, the mayor, or the mayor pro tem would be the four individuals that would be authorized in the town to be a signer on an account. So it just helps to tighten all that up on that. So is there anything else you want to add, Jeff or Ryan?
The only thing is typically we have, like on checks, 2 signatures that go out.
Yeah, we have a dual authorization requirement for any ACHs that we have, and also on our check signing and wires.
Any questions from council on resolution 29, adding authorized signatories, excuse me. I will correct that.
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution 29 of series of 2020.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We will call the roll, please, Pam.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
And David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes our formal business for this evening. We conclude each meeting with the same sort of open question about when we get to meet in person. I guess we will, this is a day-to-day proposition here. Do you have any thoughts, Ryan? Mahoney?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, to have all of the council in the council room it's not safe. And so, I brought it up to the, during a Pickens County public health official, and she was too keen on it when I kind of described what our room makeup was. And furthermore, when we're in there, we'd all have to wear masks the entire time. So if we're wearing masks for that duration,
understood. Just a question we got to keep asking, though.
Yeah.
What about an outdoor meeting?
Well, we're planning on having one for, like between the planning commission and the council, but we don't have a way to film outdoors, so that doesn't really work for public record's sake.
Or broadcast live, right?
This is COVID.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thanks, everyone. Thought we had an orderly meeting and appreciate everyone's efforts. And we will follow the fire and hopefully keep it contained to Glenwood Canyon. But it's really roaring down there, unfortunately. So, any additional comments before we sign off?
No,
Hearing
well,
none, I will. Yeah.
well, I was
Go ahead.
just gonna note that we did try to solve the problem with the drop calls, and we did have worked with Provelocity for about an hour this morning, and we'll continue trying to work on that issue that we have with the drop calls. So sorry about that, but.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good.
They were to have been watching our meeting this evening to see if they could detect anything. They're also checking back on our last meetings to see when the phones dropped, if there's perhaps some reason that they did. So it's a mystery to them as well, but we are investigating it.
Great, well, thank you. Anything else? All right, I'm going to call the August 11, 2020 meeting to a conclusion, and we are formally adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you all.
Bye, all. Thank you.
Bye.